What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto became the most wanted criminal after being framed by someone close to him? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. You know, you'd think being in an entirely different universe would involve a big transition. A lot of denial, maybe a spot of freaking out. Probably some therapy. Lord knows the folks around here could use it. But at the end of the day, Konohagakure is a city like any other. It has people. Mean, hateful people, kind and generous people. Hardworking and lazy, boisterous and shy. Fat people, tall people, beautiful people, ugly people. Although, being a city of ninja, there are a lot of really fit men and women. It is different though. Despite being relatively urban, there wasn't the dark malaise that you can sometimes feel hanging over modern cities. No, there's a different spirit here, that of a populace between rural and urban. Fortunately, without most of the problems of suburbia. Perhaps it was like this in the big cities right after the Industrial Revolution back in my old world? Hell, it reminds me a lot of the naval base housing I grew up in when my father taught at the Naval Academy. Everybody there had someone in the military, or was in the military themselves. Everybody had an opinion on history or the government. Everyone wanted their husband, wife, son, daughter, whoever, to come back safely after their next mission. Even me. Well, this me. It was the little things that let me stay sane the moment I woke up here. Memories of two worlds bouncing around in my brain. My father. Retired military, math genius, and a bit absent-minded. Despite the change in the setting and the culture, he remained my father. My brother, the closeted homo, working as a lawyer, dressing up as a woman and going down to the red light district when he thought nobody was looking, still a total and complete bitch to me and anyone he found beneath him. A bit exaggerated and a bit more disturbing here, but the fundamentals remained the same. Admittedly, the cross-dressing was unique to this world, at least as far as I was aware. In me, there were differences. Good ones, bad ones, but fundamentally? No change. Obviously, having ninja magic was a rather large difference. But ultimately superficial in defining who I was. The probabilities were insane, the implications disturbing. Unless I was insane. But nihilism is boring and unproductive. I was here. This was me. Unless in a few months I woke up back home again. If that happened, I would pick myself back up and do that again. What else could I do? Still, I think the thing that made the transition easiest wasn't my neat, awesome powers. Nor the respect I had, earned through hard work. It was, quite simply, the fact that I had a purpose. A reason for being. A direction in life beyond meandering through college trying to figure out what to do. I stared into the mirror. Age 27, a Junin of Konohagakure for less than a week. Due to head down to pick up a genin team from the academy in a few hours, and see if they have what it takes to go the distance. I adjust my glasses, run my hand through the same messy brown hair. I find myself looking at my reflection, and smiling like I haven't in years. I'm somebody here, not in awards or money but to people. Really, is there anything else you can ask for? Aside from a girlfriend, or a wife, both of which I lack in this world. Nothing new, unfortunately. Ah well, I think. Memories bumping around, triggering new ones of this world. I have the time, I have the means. And best of all, I grinned, I won't have Team 7. I let out a chuckle. I wanted no part of trying to save the world. Things would work out more or less. Sure, people would die, but that happened before I wound up here, and would continue after I died. Hopefully not for several more decades. I mean, I wouldn't leave everyone to the dogs. I could probably help here and there, but I wasn't going to try and outplot the movers and shakers of this world. I would end up in one of Ibiki's special chairs real quick if I decided to take advantage of the plot. Though perhaps I could win the affection of this world's version of my crush before she married that ass. I blinked, more memories trickling through. No, they had married here too. Can't have everything, I suppose. But, a fresh perspective, a different viewpoint, a new world and life laid out in front of me. So, I was going to take it and do the best I could. I would find greatness in my students, even if it killed them. No matter who they were. My name is Sume Andoryu. Now. And even with the dangers of this world, I have to admit I'm looking forward to the future. I have a few hours before I needed to pick up my new team. I was going to use this time making sure I could actually be a Junin without slipping and breaking my neck, or holding the wrong end of a kunai. I've never parkoured before. Well, my other does it all the time. And thankfully, it seems to be instinctual. I remember how to do it, and I don't really have to think about it. That bodes well. I headed to a rarely frequented training area and quickly managed to confirm that I can also do jutsu, and no, I won't be stabbing myself by accident. I lacked the time for more self-exploration, so I headed to the academy with the knowledge that at least I won't be an embarrassment to myself. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke. Team 7, Instructor, Sume Andoryu. Naruto's whoop of joy, Ino and Sasuke's groans of disappointment, and Sakura's rapidly shifting excitement and despair were all cut through by one reaction. Oh fuck me, everyone is staring at me. So much for not being an embarrassment. Great? Follow me. This world is doomed. I led them to the playground. I'm not Kakashi. No point blindly emulating him, or canon. I used the walking time to corral my panicky thoughts. This wasn't the end of the world. I quickly reassessed my situation, and decided that in a way, this was a position of power. These three had enormous potential. The old me had more knowledge of Naruto canon and fan ideas than he would have admitted to in public, and I had real, first-hand technical skills and knowledge due to being a Junin. This was workable. We sat down in the middle of the playground, which was more like an outdoor gym and activity center really. Well, here we are. Why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? I won't blindly follow canon, but how could I pass this up? Introduce ourselves? Sakura asked. I nodded. Well, shouldn't you go first then, sensei? Sakura asked. Her voice had a kind of Hermione-ish quality to it, which made it slightly annoying. It was ironic that the characteristics that made Hermione one of the most competent young characters in their story made Sakura rather lacking at first in this one. Nope, I said simply. Go for it, Pinky. I just wanted more time to think. In an anime, it's difficult to determine ethnicity aside from really obvious cues, like skin color, due to the limitations of art. In the world itself though, everything was real. Naruto, for instance, was more European in his appearance. The anime made his hair much brighter than it actually is. It was a darker blonde, slightly lighter than Mark Hamill's. Other than his whisker marks, you could lose him in any city in the US, really. Closer observation though hinted at some Asian features, particularly around his eyes. Sasuke looked like a protagonist out of a Final Fantasy game. Again, that odd mixture of European and Asian features, though in him the Asian aspects dominated slightly. Sakura was slimmer and more delicate than the boys, naturally, but European features dominated. She reminded me a bit of a French girl I once met on exchange, only in better physical condition. The anthropologist in me was furiously speculating about the ethnic migrations and possible reasons for this, as Sakura introduced herself. It was a speech I had heard, or read, dozens of times, though usually with a few variations. I don't remember the script word for word, but she certainly hit all the main bullet points. I nodded. Thank you. Naruto? Naruto started his introduction. Ah, wow, he was annoying all right. For better or for worse though, he was the crux of everything. Sure, Sasuke would play a large role, but if I could prevent him from defecting. Well, there was time to think about that later. Well, you're certainly enthusiastic enough. Finally, Sasuke, a few words? Sasuke was in a Gendo pose, which was most amusing, and on his young frame, adorable. To kill a certain man. Huh, he had actually said it. There was a lot of debate over whether Kakashi was as brilliant a teacher as he was with everything else, or if he was lazy, selfish human with a narrow but extreme competency in his profession. I still don't know, not having many memories of him myself, but it was clear he wasn't very nurturing. I decided then and there that I wouldn't just teach them. 2 of my students were orphans. They needed a family. Sakura needed a reality check. Sensei, you still haven't gone yet. Sakura, of course. Right. Well, my name is Sume Andoryu, I began. I like many things, I dislike many things, and I have a number of hobbies which are related to my goal. Which is, and here I stood up dramatically and gave them all a manic grin. To ransom the world for 1 million Ryu. I finished with my hand upside down and my pinky in my mouth. I received blank stares. Tough crowd. Really? Naruto asked. No. Too much work. I'll be satisfied with turning you 3 into the best ninja you can be. How's that sound? Better? Sakura hazarded. Sasuke had the look of the last sane man in a Monty Python sketch. Sakura seemed much the same. First impressions are so important. I wondered if I should have been a bit more serious. But what the hell, we're going to be together for years. Well, I think it's time for some lunch. I'm buying. I couldn't tell if this was going to be the most fun I'd ever have, or utter hell. Only one way to find out though. The elemental countries are very, very weird. You thought your glimpse into them from the manga or anime side was weird? You haven't even touched on the weirdness. Kishimoto is an interesting, though far from perfect, world builder, but I was in the elemental countries. I'm not going to think about the metaphysical ramifications of which came first, the reality or the writer. Especially as I might be drooling in the corner of an asylum. But let's just assume his muse somehow tapped into another plane of existence. We never got to see how things really worked. Just as the ninja in Naruto are very unconventional, so too is the daimyo very unlike a traditional daimyo. The closest approximation I can draw is a kind of mix between king, chairman, and prime minister. Fire Country itself is like if the Greek city-states joined together into a semi-democratic state, with each state being regulated to keep what they were best at. And the central government had a lot of influence from modern China. These prefectures, states had a lot of autonomy, as long as they kept up certain quotas of taxes and kept to established regulations and laws, and even got a say in the day-to-day running of the central government. There was a constitution and a sort of contract between the daimyo and his citizens, not that dissimilar to the Magna Carta or a Bill of Rights, that essentially stated that as long as the daimyo did a good job as the commander of the armed forces and the chief executive, he kept his job. Suits that he was not doing his job properly could be brought before a high court, and a council of judges, who were maintained by popular vote through their version of a legislature, would examine the daimyo's record. If he was not fulfilling obligations, the government would negotiate and work out a new contract with the daimyo for him to keep to his obligations. If he couldn't fulfill his contract, he'd be dismissed and a new daimyo candidate, generally a member of a wealthy family or a highly ranked military commander, would be applied for general election, but the judges' council had the final say on the daimyo's appointment, which could be overruled by the head of the diet calling for gods above. Just thinking about it gave me a headache. It was an odd amalgam of democracy, oligarchy, autocracy, corporatism, meritocracy. Their constitution was a mess. And yet, somehow, it all worked. Trust me though, I think a shonen manga was better off not getting into all of this. In the here and now though, Naruto was still pouting that we weren't eating ramen for lunch. I was salivating over all the memories of authentic foreign, to me, cuisine available. And I'd seen beef rendang on a sign the way over, and damn it, I wanted one. Still he seemed to be enjoying his food. Sasuke had gotten something simple and was eating methodically, while Sakura was picking at her extra large serving I had ordered for her and trying to eat as little as possible. And me? I was thinking about how I got into this mess. Rumor had it that Hitaki Kakashi was going to get Team 7, and in a ninja village, the more denied a rumor, the more likely it was true. I also had my own knowledge of the manga and anime. Kakashi was the guy they picked in canon, and the reasoning held up, at least in theory. He was arguably the strongest ninja in Konoha save the Hokage and the Sannin. He had the Sharingan, he had that connection to the fourth Hokage. Really, with the Rookie of the Year being Sasuke, and a Jinchuriki in the team, how could it be anyone but Kakashi? Which left me wondering how the hell I got stuck with Team 7. Did some god consider it ironic? Well, it was. Horribly ironic. Downright hilarious, if you thought about it. So, what will you be teaching us first, sensei? Sakura cut through my musings. I sighed, and looked at her bowl. I knew it was a cliché, but I couldn't help myself. I know in my heart of hearts that if I ever wake up in the Potterverse, I will own a trunk that's bigger on the inside than the outside. Sometimes clichés exist because of common sense. Well, first I'm going to make you clean your plate. Ninja use a lot of calories. Have you ever seen a fat ninja outside the Akamichi clan? Sakura's mouth hung open. Good, that's step 1. Now put the food into it. And/or you. I managed to resist the urge to twitch, and plastered a happy smile on my face as I looked up. Hello, Ben. The genin turned their heads to gawk at the bear-like man in woman's clothing who stood before our table. The smile on his face was as fake as mine, and just failed to make me want to vomit given how his makeup was applied. Ah, is that all you have to say to your brother? Especially when I brought you something special. Ben pouted. Sakura, Naruto and even Sasuke's eyes all widened. Bridge brother? Sakura squeaked. I gave a little shrug. This is Benji, my brother. As you can see, he's a very colorful individual, I said calmly. Benji smirked at me. So diplomatic and reserved, it's rather cute. He looked over at my students with a wink. Don't buy it, he's actually a nutjob. He's the nutjob? Naruto blurted out. Now, Naruto, it takes all types. I said. No throwing stones. I know all about your waijutsu. The blonde looked indignant. That's different. It's for use against perverts, not some. What? That's the most perverted jutsu ever. And it's stupid. Sakura butted in suddenly. Sasuke looked as though he'd rather be anywhere else. At the moment, I agreed completely. So I decided to try and nip this in the bud. Ben, you had something for me, right? What is it? I asked. Ben grinned and produced a box from his dress. This. He set it down with a beam. Just got it from the publishers. You were going through my mail again, weren't you? I sighed. Ben shrugged. We are brothers. And besides, you do it to me all the time. I do it because I know how to tell the difference between a bomb and a box of chocolates from your latest paramour, I said flatly, quickly checking the box for any traps. Junin training said it was safe, so did instinct. So, with a slash of a kunai, I opened the package. What's that? Naruto asked. I opened the box, and picked up the book within. I allowed myself a little smile. So, he published a new one, huh? Yep, Ben said brightly. He took the book and presented it to us all, like a butch, cross-dressing Vanna White. Ooh, now there's an image. Or a nightmare. Strategic Considerations for Future Conflicts, by Tasumi Rei? Sakura read, her eyes widening in realization. Wait, you're that Tasumi? No, that's my father, I explained patiently. Sasuke and Naruto both looked lost, and Sakura looked like she was about to have an orgasm. I did a whole report on his book treatise on joint operations. I love his writing. Huh? Who? What? Naruto asked. Before Sakura could rant at Naruto for being stupid, I quickly interjected. My dad was an officer in the Fire Army and acted as a liaison and strategic planner during the Third Shinobi War, I quickly explained. He also taught mathematics and some strategy classes, and writes books about how wars are fought and managed. I didn't know you two were related, Sakura said happily. Can I read this book? Sure, it's my copy after all, I said, handing it over to her. Naruto frowned. Strategic. Joint operations. Yeah, put pretty simply, there's a lot more to fighting than just, fighting, I explained. Though it depends on what level you're planning at. It is a good thing to learn, however, if you're going on to, say, Hokage. I grinned at the eager light that glinted in Naruto's eyes. Sasuke was only marginally interested. Tell me more. Oh, don't let him start, kid, Ben interjected. He'll talk your head off about how this general did such, and how population numbers mean something. It'll bore you to tears. But I want to learn. What would you know about it anyway? Naruto demanded. Well, I know that orange clashes so badly with your skin I'm getting a headache just from looking at you, Ben replied glibly. Can't be helpful as a ninja. Your enemies will target you first to end the pain. Mentally I groaned. Shit, Naruto, you fool, he's going on a rant. Well duh, that's why I wear it. Everyone's already glaring at me, they can have a headache for their troubles, Naruto said with a smirk. Huh, go figure. This actually made my brother pause for a moment, but he was already on a roll. Speaking of, the broody one. He looks like an anemic vampire, he's so pale. You aren't going to let him stay that way, right Andor you? And his hair, his dress sense. He could be smiling brightly right now and he'd still be taken for emo. Sasuke glowered. Ben prattled on, Sakura his next target. But you darling. Oh, I love your hair, truly I do. You take such good care of it. Oh, I do? Sakura was interrupted from defending her crush by the flattery. Well, thank you. But the dress. Oh, the dress. Quite a risk dear, you look like how shall I put this delicately? Like you decided to work early in the Red Lantern District, Ben said. Sakura gaped. My mother made me this dress. Oh, the pink hair. Oh my, you're Mabuki's little girl, aren't you? Oh, I meet her up downtown all the time. Downtown? Sakura gasped. Naruto blinked. Wait, are you saying Sakura's mom is a prostitute? My mother is not a prostitute. Sakura screeched, whacking Naruto over the head. It's nothing to be ashamed of, dearie. Mebuki does wonderful things. Ben tried. My mother is not a prostitute. I sighed, and looked across the table at Sasuke. He looked back. I shot him a look that told him I knew exactly where he was and how he was feeling. And, strangely enough, I got one back. I guess those with siblings do have a connection. Even if one is a crazed genocidal maniac, and the other is a cross-dressing asshole. Benji had gone off to terrorize some other victims, leaving me with my team. Alone. Again. Still, the tension was a little lower thanks to the fact that we all now had something in common. Namely, an intense dislike for my brother. I owed him an Angora sweater or something. Oh, wait. Angora didn't exist here. Damn. Maybe a feather boa? So, what was it you were saying about stuff a Hokage should know? Naruto asked. He was avoiding looking at Sakura, who was shoveling beef and rice into her mouth as quickly as she could with a look of misery. Sasuke was actually paying attention, which I took as a sign of progress. Well, summed up, mostly what my dad talks about is how wars are fought and managed, from the squad level up to a theater level conflict, I explained. Theater? What's this got to do with movies? Naruto asked. It's not that kind of theater, idiot, Sasuke snorted. Naruto scowled back. Fuck you, bastard. Hey, focus guys, I interjected. You want to know this or not? He insulted me. Naruto whined. Sasuke snorted. I'm stating an obvious fact. Yeah well, you're a pale, anemic vampire. Oh good, stealing material from the crossdresser. I always knew you were weird. I sighed, and in an instant, an idea appeared in my head on how to resolve the situation. Before I could stop myself, my hands were forming seals. A slip of my kunai got me some blood, and I pressed my hand down on the table. Kuchiyose no jutsu, I spoke, and in a poof of smoke, my summon arrived. My intent transmitted to it over our linked chakra, and the next second, a spider the size of a dinner plate had jumped up and latched its legs onto Sasuke's face. Please, Sasuke, act! Naruto cried out. Sakura dropped her chopsticks. Behind the spider, Sasuke's eyes were widened in frozen horror. Now that I have your attention, I said calmly. May I continue? Sakura and Naruto slowly nodded. Sasuke was still totally frozen in fear, which I alleviated by having my summon jump back to my hand. Strangely enough, I didn't feel horror, repulsion or the need to scrub my skin with steel wool until I was clean at the spider's touch. My other's experience with his summons took care of that. Hey boss, how's it going? Ringumo asked, clicking her mandibles. I smiled back at the summon, quite aware of my team's continuing horror. Alright, Gumo-chan. How about you? Bored, she said flatly. She scuttled around and looked back at Team 7. Who are these people? This is my Genin team, Gumo-chan, I replied. Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura. Oh right. Congratulations on becoming a sensei. Hello. Ringumo called, raising one of her legs in a friendly wave. Naruto managed to get over his initial horror fastest, and looked intently at the summon. Wow, a real live summon? Yes, I said with a smile. This is Ringumo, part of the spider family. I'm fortunate enough to be her summoner. He's much better than our old summoner. My mom really loves him. Gumoran said cheerfully. Sakura gaped. You mean, there are bigger spiders than you? Oh yes, my mom's really huge, Ringumo said, spreading her forelegs widely. Big as a house. Gumo-chan, why don't you head home? I'll play with you later, I said, as Sakura turned white at the mental image of a house-sized spider. The little summon gave the spider equivalent of a nod, and poofed away. SP spiders? Sasuke managed. I nodded. Yeah, sorry about that Sasuke. Perhaps a bit extreme, but I don't like it when my team are being childish. Sasuke managed to very slowly nod, and tried to regain his composure. I sighed and rubbed the back of my head. Where was I? I think I'll save that lecture for another time. Oh, I nearly forgot. You all have a test tomorrow. What, another test? Naruto asked. Yep, it's required of Konoha for a team to demonstrate whether they can operate together successfully. Put simply, if you can't work together, then you can't be a ninja. Work together? Naruto asked flatly. I nodded. Yes, I realized I was making it extremely obvious, but honestly, this was supposed to be the military, right? Well, more special ops, but teamwork is essential in any military unit. Besides, if they didn't get the point of the test from these clues, Then there wasn't much else to do but give them some hints. They couldn't be that dumb or self-absorbed, could they? I decided to leave a shadow clone with my team, and instructed it to spend time with the team and find some kind of activity for them to do together. In case it's been a while since you've read canon, only Naruto's mass shadow clone technique is forbidden. The regular version is somewhat draining, but not that uncommon. As for me, I went to the Hokage's office, Ringumo re-summoned onto my shoulder. "What are we going to do, Andoryu?" the spider asked. I simply smiled at every person we passed, every eye upon Ringumo. Subconsciously, my other was perfectly at ease with Ringumo and others of her kind. That biological imperative that stated anything with 8 legs and fangs was something to get the fuck away from was simply not there. It was actually due to just how my other had gotten to sign the summoning contract. As well as most of his current skill set. It was a fear he had been forced to get rid of. Or go utterly insane. Being reverse summoned into a world of giant, sentient, chakra-using spiders for a whole year by your insane sensei tended to prioritize how you viewed the world. But that was a different story that my other and myself didn't really want to dwell on right now. Or really, ever. "We're going to see the Hokage," I explained to my summon. "Y'all want me to grab his face? Why Gumo-chan, do you think I just summoned you for that?" I asked. "Sometimes I think you just summoned me for that," the little spider huffed. "You never summon me to play fetch or tag anymore. It's just to torment people. Is there something wrong with that?" The spider hummed thoughtfully, clicking her mouthparts. "No, it's kind of fun. See, this is why you're my favorite," I said, patting the spider affectionately. "Ah, you haven't summoned Mom for a long time. She misses you," Ringumo said. I sighed. "Gumo-chan, I'm not exactly comfortable with how much your mom likes me." "Ah, why not? She can take human form, Ringumo said. "I'm well aware, and that doesn't really help. I'd still know she's a spider." "But, so are you though?" she asked. I thought about how best to phrase my answer. "In spirit, I suppose I am, but not in the ways that might let me consider that. Besides, I know what happened to your father." "Ah, Mom likes you a lot more than she liked him," Ringumo said. We had reached the doors to the Hokage's office, nobody giving me more than a glance. It seemed I was expected. It didn't stop my spidey sense from tingling though. If anything, the fact that I was expected put me more on edge. And yes, I do have a spider sense. Sort of. Less ESP and more a simply heightened sense of situational awareness. Any Junin still alive had good situational awareness, very good, but it takes on a whole new meaning when training with smart, giant spiders. "That's what I'm afraid of," I admitted to Ringumo as the doors to the office opened. I walked inside, immediately noting 2 people in the room. One was the Hokage. The other was Hitaki Kakashi. "Sume-san, how nice to see you," Sarutobi said, smiling as he smoked his pipe. Ringumo hissed at him, and fixed all of her eyes right on his face. He didn't look in the least bit fazed. "Hokage-sama, Hitaki-senpai," I said politely. "We've been expecting you," the Hokage said unnecessarily. That he was actually speaking the obvious indicated he was giving me leave to be as blunt as I liked. I decided to take him up on the offer. "Why have I been handed Team 7? Shouldn't Hitaki-senpai be given them?" I asked. The Hokage's smile shifted, ever so slightly. "Keep in mind, this man was a 69-year-old ninja. The older the ninja is, generally, the better they're at, well, everything. But especially deception and conceit." It did not surprise me in the least that Sarutobi had the grandfatherly old man act down perfectly. It was only thanks to what I knew about him I figured he was cackling maniacally behind that smile of his. "Hitaki-san actually recommended you," he said. Ringumo hissed at Kakashi, who stiffened slightly at the sound. "Good girl. Did he now?" My gaze traveled to the man. I was starting to think the fans in the lazy and selfish camp were right. "I feel you have what it takes to truly bring out their full potential," Kakashi explained, granting me one of his infamous eye smiles. I have to say, I can understand Team 7's exasperation and anger with him easily. That smile just reeked of smug asshole. "I don't have a Sharingan," I said flatly. "Nor am I a sealing expert." "No, but you can understand them very well," Sarutobi said. I got his implication immediately. "And you know how not to teach," Sarutobi said. I mentally grimaced. He was playing that card. I thought quickly, well, if abusive teachers are suddenly a merit, I suggest Mitarashi-san. She deserves to be full Junin anyway. Kakashi looked amused. Actually, that's not a horrible idea. Yes it is. While Enko most definitely qualifies as a Junin, I'm not putting students into her care. Oh well, it had been a long shot. All the same, you're handing me two students with extremely special needs, who do not have families or clans to help them with said needs, I said. No Junin would think of refusing you assistance, Sume-san, Sarutobi said. But I have entrusted this team to you. Do you not think yourself able to handle it? I really wanted to say yes. I really wanted to say I wasn't ready for this, that I would probably fuck up the entire future of this world. I could find something, anything to say. Even if it was futile, I could go down swinging. But they were both playing on the fact that, rather traumatic life aside, I hadn't turned out totally and completely insane. That I was a nice guy who would work to keep my students from getting killed. And/or you can do anything, Ringumo said defiantly. She hissed loudly. She was always the least perceptive of her brothers and sisters. With a heavy sigh, I shook my head. No Hokage-sama. I will begin training my team immediately, I said. Ringumo gave the spider equivalent of a big smile, which got another knot shudder out of Kakashi. I recalled his home address. However, yes? I will be taking your offer of assistance. We all know Naruto has holes in his basic training that you could drive a carriage through. I never really learned a taijutsu style, and he can't even do the academy basic stances. My genjutsu is rudimentary for a Junin, and I have few elemental jutsu that Sasuke would thrive with. I am a first-time sensei with a very important team. You do yourself disservice. I understand my limitations. Konoha's strength has always been teamwork. I will be relying on my senpai, especially since you have so much free time without a team of your own. Kakashi frowned, but the Hokage gave me a genuine smile. You could tell with him, he made sure you knew. Very good and well said. With some help, I believe our resident spider sage can handle this. What? I asked, eyes widening. Sarutobi held up the summoning scroll for spiders, the very same one I had signed all those years ago. You are the only signer of the scroll who has developed the skills gained from your summons to reach Junin level, Sarutobi said. I believe there is no one better suited for the position of Spider Sage. We wouldn't accept anyone else. What took you so long? Ringumo demanded. We recently recovered it from your sensei's estate. Legal troubles, Sarutobi admitted. He sighed. I try to respect the rule of law as much as I can, after all. Thank you, Sarutobi-sama. I haven't earned the title yet, but I will. I said. To most, being a sage was, well, it was the equivalent of being the Indiana Jones or Stephen Hawking of your particular field. Looking at the canon though, being a true sage was more. Even Jiraiya failed to summit that particular mountain. Nature chakra is tricky. The Hokage had many titles, but sage was not amongst them, despite a firm alliance with the apes. I took the summoning scroll, almost reverently, and slid the shoulder strap over my head. Ringumo moved a little, and did her spider smile again. Good luck, Sume-san, and don't worry, you are not alone. Sarutobi said, the last bit more directed towards Kakashi. I bowed, and headed out, in slightly higher spirits than before. Sure, I had the fate of the elemental countries on my shoulders, but it didn't seem as bad as before. And then my shadow clone's memories popped into my head. I groaned. What is it? Ringumo asked. My shadow clone decided to have Team 7 bond by tying them all together with webbing. Is that bad? Ringumo asked. I finally heard the distant explosion that killed my clone rattle through the window. I held a hand to my forehead. Not by itself, no. I don't normally get stress headaches. Hunger headaches, yes. Allergy-related headaches, sure. Changes in weather headaches? Oh very my yes. Well, this actually felt like a hunger headache. As in, my stupid students have made me angry enough to consider eating them. So, just to clarify, I began to my rather singed-looking students. You, Sasuke, threatened to use a grand fireball on the webbing. The Uchiha survivor nodded slowly. He held up his arm, still bound in my shadow clone's webbing to Sakura's arm. Sakura, in turn, was bound to Naruto's wrist in a similar arrangement. And then Naruto pulled out an explosive note. I continued, my eyes going over to him. The soot-covered blonde growled. He started it. He threatened to burn us alive. And when Sakura tried to intervene, the explosive note became unstable and went off. I finished, my eyes going to my extremely embarrassed female student. She was nearly down to her underwear. Most of her dress had been burned off in the explosion. Why yeah, your shadow clone took the brunt of the blast, she explained. Ah, that explained why the last memories my shadow clone sent were of him yelling, "Son of a..." In English, no less. Well, you have managed to prove my point. Teamwork is paramount to a ninja team. That means cooperation. That does not mean threatening to kill each other and then blowing each other up. I said in very clear, mostly calm words. All three looked at me sullenly. I sighed. If this is how you're going to act, then I can see only one possible way you can pass tomorrow's test. Or even act as a team. I gave them all a very, very unpleasant smile. I was pleased to see them all, even Sasuke, look intimidated. I was probably helped by Ringumo hissing, but all the same. What? Sakura dared to ask. You're going to learn to work together, as one, as you are now. Blank looks for just an instant and then, what? For how long? Sasuke demanded. Until you learn, I stated flatly. But Tsume-sensei, I'm a girl. Sakura squawked. I quirked my brow. Yes, and? She looked at me as if I was an idiot. Bathroom. Ah, well, that gives you an incentive to learn quickly, doesn't it? All three of you, actually, unless you like the idea of showering together. That got them all bright red. I squashed the impulse to grin maniacally. But we have to stick together? All of us? Yes, Naruto, you do, I said patiently. I gave the matter some thought. Now, Naruto's apartment is the closest, so I suggest you all head there. Lend some of your clothes to Sakura, and then rest up. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. I grinned after all. Oh, and by the way, if any of you try to escape your bonds, Kachiyose no jutsu. Out of a large poof of smoke, a human-sized wolf spider appeared. All three of my students cringe. Then Kokubogumo here will have to reapply the webbing. And she doesn't like having to web things that struggle. She generally applies venom first. Kokubogumo, which could be literally translated as, cruel mother spider, gave my genin the equivalent of a spider smile. All three looked pale. It does make it much easier to secure new webbing, she said. I immediately noticed all three of my students looking at each other, and there it was. The beginning of a bond. Sure, they would try to team up and make my life a living hell, but that could quickly be redirected towards enemies with just a bit of training. Well, I will see you all tomorrow, I said cheerfully, as I turned and leapt off. Wow, you're really going to run them through the ringer, and/or you? Ringumo noted, hanging onto my shoulder. I grinned. Well, boot camp is always the hardest part, I replied. Besides, if I'm the bad guy, then they have a common item of hatred. Namely me. Are you sure it was a good idea to have Kakubo Ne-chan handle them? Ah, she's really a sweetheart. She won't hurt any of them. I thought about it. Permanently. It was even secret-ish. Nestled between a strip joint and a betting parlor in the red light district, the roof of which I was crouched on. Practically every ninja knew it was here, but everyone had their own theory on how to get in. From wrestling a bear to withstanding Guy's lecture on youth, parts 1 through 10, in one sitting. Now on vinyl. I really wish I was making that up. Junin don't just take missions to make ends meet, ya know. You have to look towards retirement, even if it's unlikely. But no, all you really had to do was get in without looking like a total and complete idiot. Hey there, Spider. Which I had nearly managed. I froze and looked over my shoulder. Hello Mitarashi-san, I said. That most infamous of Konoha Kunoichi chuckled evilly as she looked me over. Neither the manga nor the anime did her justice. The many drawings I had seen of her on the internet did her no justice either. Think Chinese supermodel and the hottest MMA fighter tossed in a blender and set on damn. I was torn between two strong first impressions, magically babylicious, and run for the hills. And that wasn't even my inner spider suggesting that. Rough first day for the new teacher? She asked, eyeing me like a cat does a meal. I stayed in a crouched position where I felt most comfortable. Not particularly. My shadow clone took the explosion, so no harm, no foul. She snorted, heard you got Team 7. I guess I'm not surprised you got blown up already. I shrugged. Take one egotistical, genius, rookie of the year. Add an enthusiastic but dumb dead last, and stir in one useless Kunoichi fangirl. Tale as old as time. Nothing some horrible suffering in the name of teamwork won't fix. See, this is why I like you, and/or you, she grinned. You have such a wonderful sense of priorities. I like to think so, I managed. Ah, aren't you cute, acting so jaded and detached, Anko cooed. She leaned over and grinned. Oh, bouncing Buddha on a cracker, the fishnet is true. Think about the logistics of theater-scale troupe movements. Well, I said. She slunk over, swinging her hips and making herself very, no, latch onto fear of females. It's a very spiderish thing to have. And it's good in this situation. I tear my gaze back to her face finally. So, are you going to go in, or what? She asked, face leaning uncomfortably close to mine. I managed not to blink. I was waiting for you, I said. She grinned. Stupid, stupid, stupid. How flattering, she said. Not up to this all by yourself? Want me to hold your hand? This is definitely something my other was superior to me in. Not going totally crazy in fear or lust over Anko. How could I turn down an offer like that? Okay, maybe my other was just suicidal. Oh, I'm screwed, totally screwed. Hopefully? Then she did something very well. There's no other way to say it. She giggled. All right, she said, and took my hand. Come on, they've got a special on that Iwasake. You can buy me a few. Sure, I replied, standing up. We jumped down to the entrance, still holding hands. She looked like she was rather enjoying the entire experience. God knows a large part of me was too. But seriously, I knew there was something horrible in store for me. Both sides, me and my other, were well aware that nothing good happened to us without incredible terror or trauma happening after. Or before. In this case, probably during. The Junin bar was nice. Simply decorated but clean, with several tables in front of the bar itself. Most were occupied, from Hayate in the corner with Yugo, giving every vibe of a simple night out, to Asuma and Kurenai at different tables. Clearly, their relationship was off at the moment. Aside from an old jukebox in the corner, playing something that sounded a little like box set to guitar, the biggest decoration was a wall full of photos, stretching from the entrance to the bathrooms. Anko noticed my look and quirked an eyebrow. Oh, right, first things first, who's got the camera? To my considerable shock, it was Morino Ibiki who, turning on his bar stool, produced a camera. Anko grinned and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Come on newbie, smile, she said. I offered a small smile to the camera, and with a flash, the picture was taken. Anko grabbed it and pinned it onto the wall with a senbon. Ibiki calmly went back to his drink. Something blood red. Huh, didn't figure him for the Bloody Mary type. There, you're officially in, she said sweetly. I like the ceremony, very brisk, I nodded in approval. Leaves more time for drinking, Anko returned. Speaking of, she dragged me right to the bar, practically tossing me on a stool. She plopped down cheerfully next to me. Barkeep, 4 specials. Anko's grin made me both fear for my wallet and a little more for my life. So, congrats on the team. I turned to look over my shoulder as Asuma joined us. I noticed Anko's slight rise in tension, and mentally I smirked. Sometimes even a ninja can't tell when they're unwelcome. It was a nice boost to the ego as well, but I decided not to dwell on that. Same to you. Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara, right? I recited. I shook my head with a grin. They stuck em all together and handed them to you? Of course. A natural capture team, Asuma explained. And they've got potential. He smirked. Heard about yours. Rookie of the year, and the dead last. Yep, pretty much, I spoke. I nodded kindly to the bartender as he brought our drinks. I set down some money, and glanced over as Anko began to drink. What can I say? Anything this woman does is why and frightening. She noticed my look, and smirked at me. I smiled back. I then abruptly noticed Asuma was still talking. Geez, even as a single person I could recognize when 2 other people are on a date and wish to be left alone. Managing a good team is like a good relationship. Or so I've heard. He continued. I nodded a little, and sipped my sake. Bizarre. I've had sake. I hated it. My other seems to love it. Perhaps the body overrides some things, as I quickly downed the saucer and began to fill it from the bottle again. I idly wondered if I could type 45 words a minute now, or if I lost that skill when I gained my current set. The whole time, Asuma continued to drone on. But, you're a good ninja, from what I've heard. So really, rookie, you've got to make the most of it. It's not really fair, but well, there you are. Life is unfair. I could understand Asuma was trying to help, or perhaps simply trying to keep away from Kurenai. Either way, I got annoyed. Really annoyed. And when I get annoyed, well, my inner geek comes out strongest. You know, I used to think that it was awful that life was so unfair, I began. Then I thought, wouldn't it be much worse if life were fair, and all the terrible things that happen to us come because we actually deserve them? So, now I take great comfort in the general hostility and unfairness of the universe. I sipped my sake calmly, as Asuma fell silent. He then chuckled and shook his head. I think you'll be fine, he said. Yes, thank you for the advice, I replied. Don't think you'll be better than that though, he returned glibly. I shrugged, took another sip. Damn, this stuff was good. I felt happy. Nah, things are looking up. I've got a team full of potential. Everybody looks at them and thinks of all the headaches. And they're not wrong. But after that, the shiniest diamonds take the longest to polish. Asuma raised an eyebrow. Perhaps. Still, don't get. You've got a long climb ahead of you, he continued. I nodded. Who doesn't? Fascinating, really Asuma, but beat it. Mine for the night, you understand? Anko had finally had enough and interrupted, wrapping her arm around my waist. Asuma blinked, looked between us, and studiously kept himself from smiling. Apologies? A very long climb, he added, before giving me a nod and moving off. I smiled and nodded back. Anko's arm remained. Up for another round? She asked. I blinked. That was quick. She'd finished her bottles off fast. She grinned broadly. I have a big mouth. I coughed. A little unsubtle, that, I commented. Anko laughed and patted my cheek. A time for all things under the sun. Sometimes subtlety is a waste of time. Can one make a single entendre? Or does it simply devolve into lewdness? I asked, after taking another drink of my sake. Was it a new bottle? Was it the old bottle? Who cared? You're the philosophical kind of drunk, she observed. I am not nearly as think as you drunk I am, I replied. Simply, buzzed. And I am philosophical because I have nothing more interesting to talk about. Really, and if I found what you have to say interesting, I'd think you are very, very bored. She laughed warmly, and patted me on the back. I looked at my saucer and finished it off. It's all in one's perspective, Anko commented. I looked over at her with a blink. How true. And what is your perspective? She grinned and bumped her nose against mine. That you're cute. Especially with your low tolerance for alcohol. Another drink. I looked back at her. I'll have you know, my eyes are my cutest feature, I replied. Yes, all four of them, she observed. She took another drink, emptying her bottle happily. I watched. I liked watching her. I resolved to do it more often. I was vaguely aware of the looks shot our way. I may have been a lightweight, but my other was well trained. Looks of some interest, perhaps for gossip purposes. Trust me, Konoha has a whole section devoted to rumor mongering. It's part of information control in an age without social apps. And anyone associating with Mitarashi Anko? Prime material, especially if that someone had just been handed Team 7 for training. Infamy and rumor went hand in hand with the ninja way. It was something you learned to live with. Yosh. Oh, and lunatics. Did I mention the lunatics? A strong arm came around my shoulders, and it wasn't Anko's. I smelled the spandex and talcum powder right away, and part of my mind chided me for letting mate a guy, of all people, sneak up on me. It was unbecoming of a spider, a predator, to let him sneak up upon me. Hello, Sume-san. It is good to see another worthy ninja join the ranks of instructors. I wish you and your students a long and happy youth as you work together, becoming stronger and learning from each other. Thank you, Guy, I replied. He patted me on the back hard enough I would have flown over the bar, had I not been expecting it. You are most welcome, Sume-sensei. Haha, bartender, my usual. After grabbing a jug of sake, Guy immediately gave us space and sat at the far end of the bar. I stared after him for a few moments. Guy has a strong personality, but there's a reason he gives Kakashi a run for his money. Clearly he was more perceptive than Asuma, at least at the moment. Anko elbowed me. Oi, he's not the one you're supposed to be staring at, she stated. Sorry, I think I'm a little nonplussed, I replied, looking back into her warm eyes. Anko smirked. You? A little. I'm only human. Take pity on a young drunk Junin? So you're drunk now, she asked. I looked at the evidence spread across the bar in front of me. Probably. Not sure. Always tried to stay away from the stuff. Long line of drunks in the family tree. Anko nodded and pushed her own bottle away. Do you want to sleep with me? I blinked. What does that have to do with me being drunk? Just answer me. I decided to be honest. No, I don't want to sleep with you. I want to have with you. I abruptly wondered why the entire bar was so quiet. Anko stared at me for a little while. A wide smile appeared on her face, and she tightened her grip around my waist. Would you say that if you were sober? Perhaps. Perhaps not, but it wouldn't make it any less or more true. Vino veritas, I recited. Anko chuckled. I felt a hand on my ass. You're very lucky you're so cute, she murmured. She grabbed the last bottle of sake, downed it, and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. She looked at me. Pay the bartender. We're going to your place. Don't worry, we won't get much sleep. I smiled cheerfully back, and tossed the bartender some coins. I wasn't sure how many, and before I could check, Anko was dragging me out the door. I suppose honesty was the best policy. If you were honest about it. I had only ever had one hangover before in my life, and it was a fairly mild one. Considering the stuff my brain gets up to on benign substances like crystal light or more oxygen than usual, and the medications I've been on for depression, I am not particularly eager to turn my brain into a children's chemistry playset. My other had no such maladies but also drank sparingly. As I had mentioned, a family history of destructive alcoholism had only stopped with our father, and we had no intention of starting it back up again. Even Ben relied on other vices. So, suffice it to say, I was expecting to wake up in head-splitting agony. I did, but it wasn't as bad as I had thought it would be. The very warm, soft person against me in my bed certainly helped. Wait, what? HNNNGH. I opened my eyes. The sight of a very asleep, very naked Anko greeted me. Her cheek rested against my chest, and she was drooling onto my skin. I stared in total and complete shock for about a minute. Inside, my mind waged war as it sought out an appropriate response. Yes, 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 awesome, woo-hoo, I am the man. I am the man. My libido's response was expected, but unhelpful. Marry her right now. I wasn't certain if that was my inner prude, or a part of me that couldn't believe I had gotten so lucky and didn't think it would happen again. Don't you dare move, she might eat you, and not in the fun way. My inner spider instincts had woken up, and were equally unhelpful. My bladder suddenly made itself known, demanding priority. As slowly and carefully as I could, I tried to slide out of Anko's embrace. She tightened her grip immediately, humming softly in her sleep. I grinned. Now that she was unconscious, she was slightly less on two legs and more adorable. I still needed to visit the porcelain throne. I tried to move again, but she clung on even more tightly. I had to admit, it was seeming less attractive to leave. Especially as some memories came to light. I formed hand seals. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, I whispered. A perfect, and naked, clone of myself appeared next to the bed. I formed another set, and as quickly as I could, replaced myself with my clone. Anko sighed softly and wrapped her legs around my copy, who did not look in the least bit unhappy. My jealousy died in the fires of logic. After all, how could I be jealous of myself? I'd get the memories sooner or later. I stumbled over to the bathroom, a bit too late realizing how sore I felt all over. I finished business before staring into the mirror and drinking several handfuls of water. I noted that a ridiculously silly grin was on my face. I couldn't really argue with it either. It was just so disconnected, so unreal. I was still processing everything. I decided to try and relax a little with a shower, and not disrupt this feeling of euphoria with excess thinking. The world, however, had other plans. Yo, gah, I spun around, pulling a kunai from behind the showerhead. I growled angrily when I saw that it was Kakashi, sitting in the window with a cheerful smile. Nice night? He asked. I narrowed my eyes. Yes, actually. Good, good. What the hell are you doing here? Well, the Hokage told me to personally bring you a message, but you were rather busy. I felt a bit bad about dumping Team 7 in your lap, so I ended up getting sidetracked. Huh, maybe he's not a massive prick after all. I appreciate it. So, the message is here now. He handed the scroll over. What is it? Do you believe I would violate your privacy? You know enough to decide that it wasn't time sensitive, I pointed out. He shrugged in surrender. Your sensei tried to escape last night. He was asking for you. It was as if the entire universe turned freezing cold. My jaw was set, my expression stony. The other shoe had dropped. I see. I sighed. I'll take care of it after I see to my team. Your prerogative, Sume-sensei, Kakashi said. He nodded lightly. I'll be in touch. He leapt out the window, leaving me to watch him go with a sigh. Well, could have been worse. He could have come in last night. Thank God there was a kind of guy code around here. As I made my way to Naruto's apartment, I fought the feeling of imminent doom. I doubted that my team, and boy, was that going to take some getting used to, had killed each other. Even they weren't that stupid, and Kokubogumo would keep them from causing significant harm to themselves. I expected them to still be squabbling, or just miserable in general. The smell of cooking breakfast and the sounds of some bantering, however, made me reconsider my earlier assessment. Stop pushing, Naruto. Well, stop pulling. I can't cook like this. Damn it, Sakura, I need my hand. Kokubogumo was sticking to the ceiling above, casually knitting a sweater. As the only human, I had been forced to make my own clothing during the year on the spider plane, and the old spider had taken to it as a hobby. She looked down at me with the spider equivalent of a smirk. The young do not always do as you might expect, she commented. I smirked back and nodded. You didn't have to bite any of them, did you? Only once, she admitted. After that, they quieted down. I nodded again, before peeking into the kitchen. Team 7 was crowded around the stove, still bound by their wrists. However, Sasuke was cooking up what looked like a tomato and fish stew, while Sakura worked on chopping some fruit. And on the other side, Naruto was tending to rice. Naruto, do you have a lemon? A lemon? What do you need that for, Sakura-chan? It keeps the fruit from going brown. Never mind, salt will work. Huh, are you done yet, bastard? Almost, dead last. But every time I have to answer you it's going to take longer. Yeah, you know, for Rookie of the Year, you sure cook slowly. A smirk, I could always use a Kaden jutsu. I swear to God, if you do I'll break your arm. Would you two stop arguing? I'm almost done. I climbed up onto the ceiling and watched silently as my pupils put together their breakfast, and with some considerable coordination, got it over to the table. I was amused at the start, but now I was genuinely pleased. Itadakimasu, Naruto cried before eagerly digging in. Sakura rolled her eyes. You helped make it, you know. You don't have to thank everyone. Sasuke huffed. At least he's taking the time to bother. Show a little gratitude? The meal's mostly thanks to me. Naruto snarked back. Oh yeah? It's my kitchen, which you didn't even know how to use without us. Go to hell, bastard. Already there, dead last. Sakura, having lost her patience, kicked both boys in their shins under the table. Ow, gah, wait until I get my hands free. Sakura shook her head with a sigh. Can you please just eat? Sensei's going to be making us go through more training, and I want to have all the energy I need. What happened to being thin for Sasuke-kun? Naruto smirked back. Ow, I'll have you know, Sasuke-kun admitted he likes girls with curves. Sakura huffed with a blush. Sasuke's spoon froze on the way to his mouth. What? Where was I when this happened? I heard it from a reliable source. Naruto grinned. Which is why Sensei had to order you to finish your lunch, huh? I dropped down and cleared my throat. All my students started and looked back at me. Surprise turned to death glares. I smiled brightly back. Good morning, Team 7. I've got to admit, I'm really impressed. You're late, Sakura bellowed. Yeah, Naruto growled. I disagree. I'm right on time, I said. I made a few hand seals and spat out 3 quick shots of a natural solvent. The silk bonds dissolved. Huh? Naruto asked. What the hell are you talking about? You've passed my test, I replied cheerfully. The 3 expressions of shock on their faces was great to see, even though Sasuke recovered quickly. But, wait, what was the test? Naruto asked. You didn't kill each other, and you're working well together to make breakfast and made the best out of a bad situation, I said cheerfully. It's not just blowing stuff up together, it's living together that makes the best ninja. I admit it's not a high bar to pass, but you've got to start somewhere. My pride was in no way feigned. I had thought that the brats would, at best, still be alive. But I could pick up on a real bond between them all, forged in suffering. And really, aren't those the best kinds? So, we start missions after lunch. Unless you'd like to start one now? I asked. The trio looked at each other, then back to me. No way, Sasuke said flatly. I need a shower. Me too. I mean, where the hell were you? Sakura demanded. It's been 2 days. Naruto snarled. I stared in disbelief. My internal clock was usually pretty spot on. Come to think of it though, I had never spent 2 days screwing a walking personification of before, had I? Kokubogumo laughed behind me, and I coughed in embarrassment. I was on a secret ninja mission. Very hush-hush. Anyway, you're dismissed until noon, and then, missions. That work for everyone? Unanimous nods. I turned to go. By the way, sensei, Naruto called. We're gonna get you back for this. I smirked a little. Of course. I look forward to it. Well, it was better than having to go see my old sensei. Speaking of which, interestingly enough, Konoha's ninja prison was pretty much as it was portrayed in the filler episodes of the anime. Placed on a large rock outcropping over an active volcano. The rock bridge was rigged up with explosive seals, which, if detonated, would send the whole thing into the volcano below, along with its, presumably, rioting and out-of-control inmates. Practical and pitiless. You can't say they hadn't prepared for a worst-case scenario. The prison itself looked pretty much like you'd expect a prison to look like. Boxy, drab, and ominous. Properly foreboding. The air was hot and thin, and it was only due to some kind of intricate seal work on the outside and inside that you could breathe easily. Into this dark pit of despair and horror I went. However, I didn't go alone. Sensei, may I ask why we were brought along? Sakura asked. I frowned slightly as we walked through the corridors of the prison, led by one of the guards. Naruto and Sasuke looked curious as well. It's just a quick stop, then missions, I said. Who are we visiting, anyway? Naruto asked. The guard opened a steel-barred gate ahead of us, and we entered the visitors area. Tables were set up all over, and other inmates watched from behind bars some distance away. I made out a shock of silver hair, and my memories and those of my other came into alignment. It'll be a bit, had to clear a path, our guard said. Wait here. He walked to a door on the far side of the room, ignoring the inmates out and talking to loved ones, solicitors, children. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he too caught sight of the inmate I had, who was now staring intently at us. I knew this was probably a bad idea, but I walked up to him, hands in my pockets, my students following. Sakura stared in some disbelief, while Sasuke looked indifferent. Hey, Sume-senpai, Mizuki said with a smirk. Mizuki, I returned politely. Mizuki, Naruto growled. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Mizuki's sneer traveled from my student to me at the action. He should be in here, you know. Funny, which one of us is the traitor? Naruto shot back. I gave a firm but gentle squeeze to his shoulder. The blonde scowled, but kept his mouth shut. You know he's a demon. He'll kill you in your sleep and dance the night away in your blood. Mizuki grinned. Haven't you told them, Sume-senpai? Or do you think it can learn to pretend better? Naruto clenched his fists and looked to the side. Sasuke and Sakura looked confused. I decided to nip this in the bud, quickly. Naruto is my student, I returned quietly. He's a ninja of Konoha. And that's all that matters. I looked intently at the smirking man. Tsubaki hasn't spoken to me in a while. She was supposed to visit you. Did she? I didn't come. I didn't see her. Mizuki laughed. I don't need her, I don't need anything. I suddenly wondered if filler anime was canon. Would he break out? Should I trust any of my memories? Kakashi wasn't in charge of Team 7, so we were off the rails already to some degree. I pushed those thoughts aside. You need your ego deflated if you think you're smarter than our last 2 Hokages. Perhaps some time in prison will do it, make you think about your loyalties. I doubt it though. All right, that's enough Mizuki, a guard stated flatly. Your time is up. The silver-haired Chunin shook his head, still smirking. Go to hell, senpai, and take your demon with you. Mizuki shot back, as he was led away. Sakura's gaze went back and forth between myself and Naruto. I held up a hand to forestall her questions. It's something Naruto will tell you. When he's ready, not before, I said. Naruto looked up at me, confusion giving way to a small, thankful smile. We've all got our demons. You're going to meet one of mine soon. My students looked worried, though I thought I saw Sasuke nodding for a moment. Mizuki-sensei seemed so different. What happened to him? Sakura asked. That is also a long story, I said. Sasuke grunted and the guard arrived. Okay, we're ready. He looked at Team 7 carefully. Sure you want them coming with you? Nope, I answered, then to my students, come along. MHH. Wonderful, the guard replied, voice dripping in sarcasm. This way. We headed through the side door and went through a long series of twisting, turning corridors. They were dark, the air pressure and heat making them stifling, and a sweat broke out on our brows. Each degree of decline made it seem we were descending further and further into the pits of hell. Through barred doors and steel-plated vaults we made our way, until we reached the bottom level. Insane cackling could be heard through the walls from one sealed cell. Intense killing intent was felt from another. We stopped at a cell with heavily reinforced steel bars, over which was a metal mesh charged with chakra energy. I stood in silence, closest to the cell. I couldn't blame my students or the guard. I certainly wanted to stand as far away as possible. I had better reason than most. The dark cell was poorly lit, but it was enough to see the webbing that covered it from ceiling to floor, a mess of cobwebs that seemed a visual metaphor for the occupant's own mind. In the center of the mess sat a dark shape, neither man nor spider. A horrific amalgam of both. Hello. Andoryu, the monster greeted, mandibles clicking audibly in the dark interior. Ah, such young visitors I have today. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to offer him a bottle of Chianti and some fava beans and run the hell out. Hello sensei. Minamoto Sanbu. Or what was left of him. My other felt horror, betrayal, revulsion, and an intense fear of this thing. He, who had survived a whole year in a world filled with giant, sentient spiders, and this creature was the thing he was the most afraid of. Here, my memories were of more help than they had been previously. We may have been the same in many ways, but there was still a difference, a separation in identity. My world was filled with just as many monsters. In my world they tended to wear suits, and hide their horror behind dry humor and charity events. In a way, this world was more honest. The monsters usually had the decency to have horns or teeth, or be seen gnawing on humans. Villains like Orochimaru and Itachi were so hated and feared in part because they were outliers here. More than that though, I had met people like this man, seen them broken and destroyed and twisted into something horrible. I couldn't help the pity in my heart, and it was that emotion that kept Andoryu focused. Been a while, the Sanbu monster commented softly. The shadows of the cell were intersected by sharper shadows. I felt Sakura shake a little, and I took a step closer to the bars. Partly to obscure the view. Yes, it has. The Sanbu monster stepped forward as well, and half of his face was illuminated in the dull light. His skin was hairy and scaled, and his cheek existed only as a few remaining strands of flesh. His lower jaw protruded grotesquely, a cruel, curved fang flexing slightly. His eye was probably the worst part though two small, black eyes dotted the main eye's east and south cardinal points, but his original, absolutely untouched. There was recognition in that eye, and my other's memories recounted so many times when that brown eye was winking in a playful joke, crinkled in laughter, wide in surprise, soft in affection and pride. Naruto turned away, and Sakura gasped. Again, I couldn't blame them. My stoicism was only the result of long years of training, and my personal detachment that my other didn't have. Don't be afraid, child, the creature hissed, some strange mouthparts behind his transformed jaw facilitating human speech. You're perfectly safe out there. I'm behind these bars. I will not hurt you. His human eye darted about quickly, and the shadows trembled. He regained himself after his fit, and locked his gaze upon me. You are a sensei yourself now. You should be proud. I am, I said softly. I wonder though, will you do for them what I did for you? The Sanbu monster inquired. His eyes zipped back and forth, studying my students in close detail. Sasuke flinched. Sakura kept her eyes averted, her fists and teeth clenched. And Naruto. Naruto stared in silent horror, unable to look away. Yes and no. I'll make them strong ninja, sensei, I said carefully. It's my duty. Tell me though, Andoryu, will you love them? The Sanbu monster asked. Will you cherish them? He tilted his head, more of his misshapen jaw visible in the dim light. As I did you? I'll keep them safe, sensei, I said, my words even and monotone. I'll teach them well. But that is the question, isn't it, Andoryu? The monster turned, giving us only a flash of his full form. For that I was thankful. Sakura probably couldn't handle it. Not that I could blame her. If I was her age, I don't think I could. All the preparation in the world. None of it can keep us safe. Keep our loved ones safe. I blurted out the first words to come to mind. It wasn't your fault. Silence. My other's memories immediately told me that was a mistake. Oh, that is what they tell me. Day in and day out, they told me. The Sanbu monster hissed, the shadows tense around him. Over and over, hoping to replace the truth. He turned his head completely around, and Sakura, who had dared to look again, grabbed onto the arm of the nearest male and tried to hide her face in his chest. But we both know the truth, Andoryu, we both do. The monster moved back, his locomotion a strange mix of a spider's scuttle and a man's walk. After all, it is why you survived. I was silent for a moment. The Sanbu monster's mouthparts clicked. Yes, I am right, ha ha ha. They tell me I am wrong, but you. All three, you stand and live in breath, and they don't. So really, why am I in here? Why am I in here for being right, my student? You wanted us to be strong, sensei. And we are, I said quietly. Strength, however, it comes with a price. It always does. I managed to fix my gaze into his. This came with too high of a price. HMPH. So you do not see the truth either. Pity. You were my favorite student. We were all your favorites, sensei, I said softly. You said so yourself. Ha 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 ha. So I did. I told you, but it does not change things. I was right. And still, you do not see it. He moved then, slammed right up against the bars. Sakura screamed, and the guard moved forward with a cattle prod. I took in the tangled mess of my sensei in an instant, before the electricity ran through the metal and the prisoner was forced back with a cry. He shuddered, the various legs protruding from so many places on his body, the carapace only partially formed out of his ribs and other bones either fully out of his skin, or straining against it. It was all visible, a twisted mockery of nature. I could probably expect a lot of nightmares. After all, it wasn't the first time I'd seen him like this, and the nightmares still came. He looked back at me, the pain already forgotten. I was right, but clearly, that is a subject for another day, he hissed. You didn't come here for that. No. Why did you try to escape? I asked. My sensei giggled. Escape? Me? Why? Why would I escape, I ask you? What need have I? He crawled up the wall, settling upon the ceiling and curling into a ball. I have no need. I am secure. Don't worry, they take care of your sensei. He bent his head and looked at me again. It was so nice to see you again, my student. Bring Ayumi and Jiro next time, won't you? He bowed his head, and the horrible mess of my sensei cloaked itself in darkness. Only his spider eyes still open, still watching. If I could bring them here easily, you might not be in here, you know? He paused. Ah, yes. Irony. Well then, away with you. Let me know when you see the truth. I slowly nodded, and turned to my students. Sakura was a trembling wreck. Naruto looked ready to be sick, and Sasuke looked, well, like he might have his first bowel movement in years. I shook my head. This was pointless. It may have been from the start. We're leaving, I said. Their relief was palpable, but they still watched their backs as they left the cell. I lingered a moment longer, staring into those pitiless black eyes, before I turned to follow. I hadn't learned anything useful, anyway, so why had he sent for me? I thought of dates, it wasn't an anniversary. Of any kind, it wasn't a birthday. So why? I didn't know. The trip out of the prison was in silence, and nobody broke it until we got past the guards on the bridge. Sensei, what the fuck was that? Naruto exclaimed. I sighed, and closed my eyes tightly. It's another long story. My demon, I said. I snorted ruefully. It's another little thing about what we do. Sasuke's mouth opened, and eventually managed. I think we deserve to hear it. I'd be fine not knowing. Sakura offered. She gulped at Sasuke's look, and quickly recanted. But if Sasuke-kun wants to know. I nodded. All right then, I'll tell you. But later. I don't think any of us can handle it right now. But sensei, back there, you didn't even flinch. Sakura insisted. Yeah, you just stood there, cool as ice. How'd you do it? Was it some kind of jutsu? Naruto asked. I sighed, and raised up a hand to them. My personal tribute to Gene Wilder. They stared at it, until realization flashed in their eyes as they saw it shaking. Yeah, but this is my shooting hand, I thought. I smiled wryly. Not a jutsu, but it's a useful thing to practice. Ichiraku Ramen was in the outer circle of Konoha, hence, we stopped by it. It was a bit early for dinner, but I decided a little comfort food was something we all needed at the moment, and few foods beat ramen on that score. Also, I could remind Naruto we had already visited over the next few days when he begged at lunchtime. Not to mention that old man Ichiraku and his beautiful daughter, who, strangely enough, strongly resembled Aerith from Final Fantasy VII. Advent children were so keen on Naruto's moods they stayed quiet and in the background as we commiserated. I took a few bites of the warm noodles and broth, and glanced over my students. I had to admit it was good, but we were all in poor mood to appreciate it. They were looking intently at me, waiting. Sakura had that kind of reluctant anxiety about her, where you suspect bad news is coming but you need to hear it. Naruto looked shaken, like he was recovering from intense shock, but was already tapping his foot impatiently. Sasuke looked, well, intense. More than usual, as though trying to force me to speak with his gaze. I took a deep breath. 13 years ago, I was in the last Shinobi War, I began. My team was led by Minamoto Sanbu, who was, at the time, the official spider sage of Konoha. He had a wife and 2 children. I glanced down into the ramen bowl, Miyuki and her little ones, Jun and Tomoko standing out clear in my mind. Had Naruto asked. Sakura shot him a look, and he didn't ask further. My teammates, Kuroshia Jiro and Futsuno Ayumi, were orphans, I said quietly. Between my father's deployments elsewhere and my mother's work at the daimyo's court, we all grew very close. Sanbu-sensei basically treated us like his kids. He was a great teacher, a second father to myself, and family to my teammates. I sipped some tea I had ordered, my taste buds barely responding to its flavors. Talking seemed so very hard at the moment. Anyway, we were assigned to support a regular Fire Country infantry division in Grass Country, I continued. We did reconnaissance, assassinations, missions of that nature. We were at war, remember? Sanbu's family stayed at the local base. I held a hand against my upper lip, my thumb and index finger splayed out across my cheeks. It was a bit of a habit. My lips were frequently chapped and I got self-conscious about it at times. One day, we were called in to do a series of strikes behind enemy lines, taking out a few supply depots. They were actually decoy sites. An Iwa ninja team had figured out who we were, and had used the depots to draw us away from the infantry division's base. I drained my teacup and set it down, my hand shaking a little. What happened? Naruto asked. I sighed. The ninjas attacked the base. They snuck in explosive notes on dozens of soldiers. Detonated them simultaneously, I went on. They then swept in, attacking the base's civilian section. Sasuke grew increasingly grim. It was little surprise. When we got back, we found. I paused. They didn't need to know the specifics. A team of ninja with a solid plan and the element of surprise can be extremely effective. Even against an entire division. There were no survivors. I shook my head, trying to dispel the bad memories. The war ended soon after. Our sensei he wasn't himself after. He threw us into training, almost constantly. He kept trying to get missions into Earth Country, hoping to settle the score. Sasuke didn't react to that. Sakura shook her head. But it doesn't explain how she trailed off. I closed my eyes, and then opened them again. God, this was tough. Like pulling a barbed knife out of your stomach. The Hokage thought that Sanbu needed a break. That we all did. So our sensei decided to take us on a training journey that would last 1 year. It's kind of traditional. I glanced down at the ramen bowl. 1 month into it, after he was sure the minder Anbu had sent along to shadow us to make sure he wasn't going to do anything reckless, was gone. He revealed he had obtained 2 summoning contracts, in addition to the spider scroll. He gave us each one, and said that the real training would begin now. I was silent for a moment. Each scroll had been modified by our sensei to reverse summon the first person to use them. Right into the realms where those summons lived. He had also ensured that we could not return to our world for a whole year. I ended up on the spider plane. The spider plane, you mean? There was nothing but spiders there? Naruto asked. I nodded. Not quite, but basically. What was more, he had taken all our weapons and tools away beforehand. Sakura gaped in disbelief. But you had your jutsu, didn't you? I snorted. I was the field medic of the group, and I supported the others with a little genjutsu and some traps. Jiro was the powerhouse, but he only knew a few jutsu. And Ayumi, well, she was smart, very smart, and knew several jutsu. But her stamina was low and she was. What was more, he'd sent all three of us to worlds we were deathly terrified to be in. You mean, you were afraid of spiders? Naruto asked. I nodded. Absolutely, 100% terrified. As a kid I'd leave the room if I saw a house spider, let alone something like Ringumo, I said. Ayame poured me more tea, which I gratefully accepted and drank. Ayumi ended up in the land of the dead. And Jiro found himself, somewhere? An ocean plain, completely underwater. We're still not entirely sure. My god, Sakura muttered. She looked ill. Sasuke grimaced. Naruto shook his head in disbelief. And your sensei? He asked. He got too deep into the spider sage's abilities, lost himself, I said. You saw the results. Sakura looked green, and moved further away from her nearly untouched bowl of ramen. Sasuke looked away, but disgust and horror was written in his body language. Naruto shuddered. Oh god. I nodded. I had initially intended to ease you into all this slower. But, I sighed again. Sensei just gave me an excuse. I guess I wanted you guys to trust me. By showing us your past? Sakura asked. I nodded. Expecting you to trust a stranger when you're this age isn't rational, I replied. I shared part of myself with you guys, and as your sensei I know a fair amount about your pasts. So, I hope we're even. I looked seriously into their eyes, each of them. It was good that they were all sitting to one side of me. I also wanted you all to get a good look at how rough the life of a ninja can get, I added. It's not all glory and becoming Hokage. At Sakura's queasy look, Naruto's scowl, and Sasuke's deep frown, I coughed. Don't take this as an attempt to scare you off though. It's not all horror and darkness either. Sure, it's rough. It's horrible sometimes even, I smiled. But I don't regret following this path. There's a lot of good that comes from it. Ultimately, it's up to each of you to decide for yourselves what something is or isn't. I rolled my shoulders. So, take this as your first lesson from me, your sensei. Understanding is a three-edged sword. Your side, their side, and the truth. They were silent for a bit before Sasuke, of all people, spoke. I thought your first lesson was teamwork, he said in a deadpan tone. The tension broke, as Sakura and Naruto looked in disbelief at Sasuke. I smiled. Okay, second lesson then. Memory is the second thing to go in old age. What's the first thing? Naruto asked, slowly grinning. Sakura rolled her eyes. I forget, I replied, calmly sipping my tea. Sasuke smirked. Naruto grinned. Sakura actually giggled. That's such an old joke, sensei. Well, I'm an old guy, right? Not that old. The Ichirakus moved out from the background, Ayame starting up a cheerful conversation with Naruto. Secretly, I breathed a sigh of relief. The bond seemed to be holding between the three of them. Sakura, I wasn't too sure about. She had decided to become a ninja in part due to her crush on Sasuke, after all. She seemed to be holding it together though, even though I could tell she'd probably be having nightmares tonight. Still, nobody had quit. Nobody hated me. Nobody hated their teammates. Maybe I wasn't so bad at this sensei thing after all? It was at this moment my spider sense went off, and I sprung off the stool a split second before a snake embedded its fangs in my seat. Holy shit, Naruto shouted, as Sakura shrieked in terror. I did a one-handed handspring and deftly landed on my feet. Facing me, and wearing a frightening, albeit a pants-tighteningly arousing, smile, was Anko. Aren't you the Casanova? Anko hissed. We have our first date and you don't bother to call me for 2 days afterward. Anko. Hi. Well, I meant to call but. I stopped. Wait a minute, we were together for 2 days. Anko grinned viciously. Still counts, lover boy. Besides, you lied to me. You said you'd make me breakfast. I did. Correction. Your clone did, Anko hissed. She blurred, and I narrowly parried the strike of her kunai with one of my own. She forward flipped right over me, letting me get a very nice look at her cleavage that I would have appreciated more if she wasn't attacking me. You really upset me, Endoryu-chan tilde, she leered. You're so going to make up for it. Can't we talk about this, Anko-chan whoa. I ducked, barely escaping her knife slash. She'd managed to nick my cheek, and saucily she licked my blood off her blade. I think we're past talking right now, she purred. Let's get to the fun. Suffice it to say, Team 7 didn't get to do any missions that day, either. However, I was able to summon Ukamigumo, the wolf spider who had taught me hunting and evasion, to do some training with them. I was busy appeasing Anko. Which, as you can imagine, was very, very time-consuming. And was not as much fun as you might think. Well, depends on your tastes, I suppose. I started Team 7 off on tree climbing as the first thing for them to learn. It was nice and simple and had plenty of applications. I think I sold Naruto most of all when I demonstrated how you could catch an enemy's thrown kunai with said skill, and then throw it right back. In one motion, with enough skill. Granted, I cut a bit off his ear but he walked it off. Tough kid. Didn't even get that nasty with revenge. Just used an Anko version of his harem jutsu. I didn't get a nosebleed so much as screamed in terror. Even Sakura was laughing at me too hard to get mad. Hey, one Anko is tough enough. 20 of her, I'd probably walk right up to Itachi and tell him his mother was a whore. I also had them doing D ranks, as many as I could get. I didn't know when Tazuna would show up, so we were at the mission office every single weekday. I know, I didn't have to take the mission. It might not be assigned to us at all. But it was a critical event that forged the team together in canon, and I had a feeling the hand of fate would not let me escape it. Naruto's cage bunshin allowed us to do several missions at once, stuff that I considered good training for him. After all, the better he could manage his clones, the better he could, well, manage his clones. Making him realize he could get memories from them helped as well. Seriously, Kakashi, I could only blame Kishimoto for poor writing before landing here. You knew how the jutsu worked. To keep the others busy, I had Sakura read all my dad's books and had all three of them plan out how to do each mission, which I gave a different objective each time. One was to paint a fence without being seen doing it. That was particularly fun to watch. Naruto's pranking skills and experience had given him a good grounding in operational planning. Sakura's considerable brains let her fill in any gaps, and Sasuke's attention to detail helped them edit it out into something usable. I wrote down the whole shebang, but I'll have to probably rewrite it. Note to self. Do not write journal while eating ramen. Every Saturday, I would summon one of my spiders to do a particular training exercise with them. Ukamigumo was a Portia spider, a type of jumping spider. Spiders are the only arthropods that have a central nervous system, and the Portia spider was easily the smartest of them all. They are rather like ninjas in their natural state. They throw captured flies into other spiders' webs to attract the owner of the web in order to eat them. They imitate the mating dances of spiders to deceive them. They use the terrain to their advantage while hunting. Seriously, these things are scary enough when they're little and not sentient. I remember a documentary on funnel web spiders in Australia. Apparently they will get annoyed by lawnmowers and chase down and bite people, sending them to the hospital. Thank God my other never met any during his time away. Anyway, it's little surprise that Ukamigumo was very, very good at stealth, hunting, and deception. The exercises were fairly simple. Try to get Ukami before he got you. The results were, well, somewhat predictable. Naruto gave as good as he got, and nearly every exercise involving him ended with explosions. His win-loss ratio was a little fuzzy because of this. Sakura worked at being clever, and more often than not got her ass kicked, but she did become progressively better and better at evading Ukami. Sasuke didn't waste any time and tried to kick Ukami's ass before he found him. Despite being Rookie of the Year and very talented for his age well. Ukami has been at this for a very long time, and about the only times you can beat him is if you are very, very smart, like Sakura, very, very crazy, like Naruto, or very, very lucky, like me. In all honesty though, all three of them more often than not ended up tied up in webbing and left hanging from trees. Upside down, sometimes for hours. Hey, it's how Ukami taught me and look how I turned out. Obviously my students were less than appreciative, and after finding my house filled with raspberry jam, only one team would dare give me the raspberry, and all my clothes replaced with bondage outfits. I suspect Anko supplied them. I decided to make it up to them with all of my basic jutsu. All of which my sensei had entitled, Camping Jutsu. These were all very basic. A small fireball jutsu for lighting a campfire. A jutsu that made a little orb of light in your palm. Think, Lumos, a jutsu for condensing water out of the air to drink. A jutsu that produced a current of electricity in your palm. A jutsu that would activate the seals in your tent to make it stand up. Lots of fun, simple stuff that was practical and useful. At Naruto's complaints that he wanted cool combat jutsu, I reminded him that even the most basic jutsu, with sufficient chakra and in the right circumstances, could be awesome attacks. After all, hadn't he pulled off pranks with very simple materials? The very scary grin that emerged on Naruto's face, and the expressions of dread on my other students' faces convinced me to come up with another training exercise to keep them busy with. Seriously, the kid was like MacGyver. Give him the chance and he'd combine dozens of rather disparate and useless items together to form a laser cannon or railgun or something. Hence, I gave each of them their first jutsus to master. For Naruto, I gave him Doden, Kaisaku no Jutsu, and had him practice controlling his clones from underground. Yes, apparently digging underground was totally a ninja skill he'd learned off-screen. Thanks Kishimoto, that was very helpful. Granted, I was probably going to get a lot of hell from the townspeople for essentially creating a plague of giant, orange-garbed prairie dogs, but screw them, it was useful. For Sakura, I had her learn how to make her own explosive tags, and a rather simple genjutsu that was entitled Genjutsu, Kyusei. It was a compulsion genjutsu that made a person focus on anything affected by the jutsu. Obviously it would only work on ninjas below a certain skill or power level, but I figured that, since her crush on Sasuke seemed to be relatively under control, her genius could shine through and allow her to come up with some nasty applications for both. For Sasuke, I called in the standing order the Sandame had promised me for the first time to have Kakashi give Sasuke some individual instruction in a jutsu or two. I hadn't the foggiest what to teach him and I wasn't prepared to hand over any spider-style techniques to any of my students just yet. I mean, it was all good and well in theory to try teaching them Rasengan and Chidori and so on. Except I didn't know them myself. I explained to Naruto and Sakura that since my skill set was a little low on elemental jutsu, I'd see if I could get them some more jutsu from the other Junin. Though I might need their help for some bribery. Naruto looked a little suspicious, but it looked like he did at least appreciate what I was doing for him and agreed. Sakura went along with Naruto. And Sasuke, who had already benefited from this, was willing to help. This is how we came to be at Team 8's training grounds, on what looked like a very nice Monday morning. I hadn't really gotten that great a look at Team 8 inside the classroom, as I was busy having a panic attack at the fate of the elemental countries being dropped in my lap. Now that I was calmer, I was able to give them some thorough scrutiny. Shino looked rather like a young Orin from Final Fantasy X, in the texture of his hair and his facial structure. Which was appropriate. He had the air of a quiet badass, calmly analyzing his surroundings with Vulcan-like precision. He stopped short and his focus became very intense when he spotted me. I guess I couldn't blame him. The Aburame clan was, quite understandably, cautious around spiders. And wasps. No one likes wasps. Like my students, his features were a mix of European and Asian, though in his case the European side seemed to be winning. His nose was almost Roman, which I found befitting his stoic nature. Kiba looked like he had a fair number of ethnicities in his background, but for some reason he reminded me of a part Navajo friend of mine. Something about the cheekbones, the hair and his eyes. Whatever his descent, he looked feral and wild, a boy who spent most of his life outside. You wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like him on a motorcycle in our world, wearing a leather jacket with a devil-may-care grin on his face. Akamaru looked like no dog breed I had ever seen before, but that was understandable. Different world, different breeds. And breeding programs involving ninja magic. As for Hinata, well, you think she's cute drawn? She's even cuter in real life. Like the others, she was a mix of European and Asian features, but they had come together almost perfectly to give her the best parts of both. The first description to leap to my mind was Mulan meets Snow White, with a healthier set of curves. She was pale, but not deathly so. Her hair was black but had the slightest blue sheen to it. As for her body, true to her drawings, if not a bit slimmer and more athletic, though it was difficult to make that out through her jacket. Not that I was perving on a 12-year-old girl, this was entirely scientific. I was still seeing Anko in some sort of bizarre relationship involving much too many blades. If anything, I wanted to pat Hinata on the head, maybe give her a hug and a cookie. Besides, Kurenai was also here. Very beautiful, though according to my others' memories, very high maintenance. Even if she wasn't in an off-again, on-again relationship with Asuma, I wouldn't have any interest in her. especially if I didn't want Anko to get really upset. I'm a good boyfriend? Friend? I really was going to have to talk to her about that. Hello Andoryu, she greeted with a smile. What brings you here? Hinata was staring intently at Naruto, a blush coloring her cheeks. Kiba scowled at our arrival, and Shino kept up his laser intensity stare right at me. Or more specifically, Ringumo-chan, who was once again riding on my shoulder. Yuahi-san, I was just thinking that, given the emphasis on teamwork for our ninja, that maybe our teams could benefit each other if they did some joint training, I said. Kurenai raised an elegant eyebrow and glanced over my students. Oh? I nodded. The better they work here, the better they work out on real missions. Plus, we should always know who we're working with, correct? Hard not to know who we're working with, Kiba jeered. Naruto growled back. Fuck you, mutt. Bite me, dead last. A single look from both of us silenced our students, and Kurenai and I looked back at each other. I see your point. I think it's a good idea, Kurenai said. Though we need to do some assessment. Agreed, I said. So, let's do some simple sparring. Sakura, you're up against Kiba. Sensei? Sakura asked. I looked over at her. Something wrong? Well, no but. Then get in there, I ordered. Sasuke, Naruto, sit with Hinata and Shino won't you? Take notes. Hinata blushed heavily as Naruto cheerfully took Kiba's vacated spot next to her. He turned to Hinata and grinned. Hi. Hi, she replied quietly. So quietly even I had to strain to hear her. Kurenai shot a knowing look in my direction, and I shrugged, glancing over at Hinata and Naruto. Kurenai looked thoughtful, then smirked very slightly. Everyone, pay close attention to how this goes, I said. Gumo-chan, go sit with Sasuke. Okay, my summon cheered, and she scuttled over to hop onto Sasuke's shoulder. The Uchiha heir struggled not to shudder, and shot me a glare. I simply smiled back. Out of all of my students, Sasuke, hilariously, was taking the longest to get over his fear of spiders. Sakura was coming along, able to resist panicking unless Ringumo pulled a facehugger, and Naruto, well. He was still in his, icky things are awesome, phase so his immunity to spiders was going to come in soon. Sasuke though, well, we had to work on that. Sakura faced Kiba in the middle of the training ground. It was a covered clearing in the forest. Trees extending their branches overhead to cast mottled light all over the grass. Sakura looked a bit nervous while Kiba just grinned. Relax, I'll go easy on you, he said. Sakura bristled. What, easy? Kiba frowned. I was just saying, ya know, in case you were worried, Kiba backpedaled. This is training. It's not supposed to be easy. Especially not if you're a girl. Sakura insisted. Kurenai looked over at me questioningly. I shrugged. I seem to be doing that a lot. Perhaps my assessment of Sakura as a potential Hermione wasn't too far off. Okay, sorry, Kiba insisted, holding his hands up. I didn't mean anything by it. Then what did you mean? Sakura demanded. Begin, Kurenai said, a hint of amusement in her tone. Sakura immediately whipped out several shuriken and threw them at Kiba. He dodged several and deflected one with a kunai. Sheesh, touchy. If you hadn't looked nervous I wouldn't have said anything to begin with. Kiba shouted at her. He landed and sprang forward, Akamaru providing a diversion as his master made a strong kick at Sakura's hip. Sakura pulled back out of range, and deflected Kiba's follow-up punch with her arm. Gah! She cried, and snapped a kick up at Kiba's stomach. He saw it coming, and took it with a grunt, before responding with an uppercut to her jaw. Sakura-chan, Naruto shouted, as Sakura landed hard on the ground. I mentally smiled as she remembered to slap her hands against the ground, a judo technique I taught her. It dispersed a lot of momentum that would otherwise be hitting her, and hard. Kia! She cried, snapping a kick between his legs from the ground. Kiba yelped and jumped back, allowing Sakura to get back up. Akamaru! Kiba called, and Akamaru slammed his little body against the small of Sakura's back from behind. Arf! Akamaru, confused, sailed right through Sakura, and I felt some pride in my student. She had switched herself for a bunchin very quickly. Woo? Oh, where'd she? Kiba asked, looking around, before a kunai flew above him from behind a tree. Sakura Fubuki no Jutsu, she called, and a bag burst open. Kiba's jaw dropped as he was surrounded by falling cherry blossoms. Huh? Whoa, pretty. A small but quick fireball shot out into the cloud, and I winced as they all went up in a large blast. Gah! Kiba screamed, as he was caught in a fireball. Sakura emerged, eyes wide. Oh no, I didn't mean to. The smoke cleared, revealing a charred log. Sakura blinked before narrowly avoiding a punch to the head, as a slightly crispy and very unhappy Kiba counter-attacked. You bitch, you could have fried me, he shouted, as an equally sooty Akamaru barked and leapt up. Sorry Sorao. Sakura barely ducked Kiba's kick, even while Akamaru bit her foot. Oh wow I'll gold TGO. I had mixed feelings. Sakura was definitely losing now, but she was still avoiding any major damage. Not easy with a dog attached to you. My boys on the other hand were openly amused. Naruto began laughing and Sasuke had a wide grin. Kurenai seemed interested in something. Stop, she ordered, and our students froze. Well, aside from Sakura, who kept shaking her foot to try and get Akamaru to let go. Akamaru, Kurenai said flatly. The puppy huffed, and let go of Sakura's foot. Kurenai walked over to Sakura. You used a compulsion jutsu on the paper? Kurenai asked. Sakura nodded. Yes, on all the pieces. Very ingenious. Though next time, you should include an explosive note with the mixture so you can detonate them remotely, Kurenai advised. Having to shoot off a fireball to get them started gives away your position. It's what let me get away in time, Kiba grumbled. Kurenai looked over at her student and nodded. Yes Kiba, very good work there. Though next time, I presume you won't underestimate her? She asked with a slight smile. Kiba scowled at Sakura. Yeah, next time I'll beat her into the ground straight away, he growled. Sakura scowled back. Next time I'll blow you up sooner. All right. Relax you guys, it's nothing that you can't sleep off, I said. Sakura winced and scowled at Akamaru. The puppy panted and made himself look quite adorable. Her anger evaporated away, and she smiled. Your dog's very good too, she said. Kiba raised an eyebrow and then grinned. Yeah, well, he's a for a pretty girl, he said. Sakura actually blushed, and I caught the speculative look on Kurenai. I let out a tiny snort. Were all the Junin teachers little matchmakers at heart? Or was it just since I became one? I didn't know. Perhaps we were all just that bored. Though perhaps I would find out. Besides, Sakura may have been getting better, but turning into ninja, Hermione wasn't the best direction either. Too stiff and bossy. Oh well, all in good time. Sasuke, Shino, your turn, Kurenai stated. The two taciturn genin rose, both looking a bit disturbed. For them anyway. It wasn't hard to figure out why. And so I said to the Bug-san, please let me eat you. I am so hungry. But Bug-san didn't say anything back. He just buzzed. I asked politely there was no need to ignore me, but I felt a lot better after playing fetch with Andoryu. I love how he throws my ball and I bring it back and he throws it again and I never know where he's going to throw it. It might be here, it might be there, it might be. Ringumo, I think you should let them spar, I called. The little spider looked over at me and then hopped off. Thanks for listening to me. Good luck Shino. Your bugs look juicy and delicious. I bet you'll do well. She waved her leg at Sasuke. Good luck Sasuke. You look juicy and delicious as well. I bet you'll do fine. She then turned and scuttled back to me. I offered an apologetic look to both of them. Shino's face became focused. Sasuke shot me a glare but managed to calm down back somewhere to his usual expression. Kurenai seemed amused by Ringumo, which I suppose was for the best. Presumably a genjutsu specialist was used to thinking up a lot more terrifying things than a dinner plate-sized spider with a cheery disposition. Fight, I said, and Sasuke and Shino leapt into action. A flurry of finely controlled punched, kicks, palm strikes, and leg sweeps. I was slightly surprised, neither could gain the upper hand, and I hadn't remembered Shino being that skilled this early. Still, the manga didn't cover the other teams hardly at all up to the Chunin exams, and it had been a while since I sat down with the anime. Their taijutsu was finely polished, the result of long hours of training every day. Naruto looked impressed, even though he tried to hide it, and Hinata and Kiba smiled as their teammate fought so well. Was Sakura drooling? Yikes, I really shouldn't have been surprised. She was, as Naruto would say, a closet pervert. Though I thought she'd have been drooling only if Sasuke was fighting, say, Neji. You know, two Bishonen guys fighting, striking, each looking more focused and arrogant than the other as they try to match each other in angst and fighting skill. Ooh, I like how Shino moves. He's very tasty looking, Ringumo said. Shino's eyebrow twitched, very slightly. And Sasuke looks juicy. Tasty, tasty. You're hungry aren't you Gumo-chan? I asked. Ringumo gave the spider equivalent of a shrug. Uh-huh. I sighed, and pulled out some money. I handed it to her. Go to the corner store nearby, and buy yourself some food, alright? Alright. Ringumo cheered, as she turned and scuttled off quickly. Kurenai's brows rose slightly, and I shrugged in return. Kids, I said succinctly, my eyes on the spar. Kurenai chuckled. Both of our students had relaxed considerably now that Ringumo was gone, and their movements became more natural and fluid. It was easy to see what they were doing, assessing each other's strengths and weaknesses using taijutsu first. Shino's fighting style was very controlled and focused, with a minimum of flair. By no means was he predictable though. Well, to other genin of course. Sasuke's fighting style was very quick and aggressive, with a minimum of defense. That made sense, it was made for Uchiha, and when you have a Sharingan, you literally see attacks coming. It made for a counter-heavy defense. Sasuke leapt up and performed a hammer kick, which Shino caught and used a burst of strength to flip him up over Shino's head. However, my student had done this on purpose. As he flipped in midair, he tucked his hands close to his body and performed hand seals in quick succession. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke bellowed, shooting a fireball at Shino. He was quickly consumed by the flames. Or rather, a small cloud of his bugs were consumed, as he had replaced himself with his Kikai at the last moment. Sasuke was surprised only for a moment before he spun around, seeking out Shino. Whoops, forgot to look up. Shino landed a kick right to his face. Gah, Sasuke cried. His hands snapped together and he swung Shino down onto the ground, hard. A swarm of Kikai left Shino's pants and buzzed after Sasuke, an attack my student was barely able to get away from. He made more hand seals and unleashed a stream of flames, which Shino deftly evaded. Shino then threw a kunai with a flash tag attached, which went up in the flames and blinded everyone who hadn't closed their eyes in time. Specifically, everyone other than Shino, Kurenai, and myself. Gah, ow, damn it. I reopened my eyes just in time to see Shino taking advantage of Sasuke's closed eyes. However, my student hadn't been as careless as before, and when Shino was in range he lashed out with a wide punch that landed in Shino's gut. A blow which Shino returned to Sasuke's face. Herc, Sasuke cried. He staggered back and got back into fighting position, but Shino had slid his hands into his pockets quite calmly. What are you doing? Sasuke asked. This battle is over, Shino stated. Sasuke's eyes widened, as he felt his chakra being drained away. The flash tag was merely a means of cover for my allies, a window wherein either you would be blinded, or would close your eyes to protect your sight, Shino stated. And I did it all 35 minutes ago, I mumbled. At Kurenai's questioning look I waved my hand in a small circle and shook my head with a grin. I walked over as Sasuke collapsed. All right, very good both of you, I said. Kurenai nodded to Shino, and the victor withdrew his insects back into his coat. I stood over Sasuke. All right there? Sasuke glowered up at me, and I shrugged. Hey, it just means that you need some more work, I said. Anyway, you were keeping up just fine until he used his insects. You'll get your Sharingan soon, I should think. Sasuke stared at me for a few moments, before nodding and getting back up. He looked at Shino and smirked. Next time, he said. Shino nodded. Next time. Sakura was staring at Shino in some disgust. Looks like her ickiness resistance wasn't as high as I thought it was. Might have to start sneaking spiders into her bed if she was going to shift gears this fast on me. Just a moment, Kurenai said. Hinata, come here. She took Hinata to the side, as Naruto looked at me in some confusion. I shrugged in response and walked over to stand next to him, as Kurenai murmured a few things to her student. What's the deal? Naruto asked. I cast a genjutsu. Kurenai had done the same thing, and smiled. Hinata has a bit of a confidence issue because of her family, I explained. Naruto's eyes narrowed in confusion. Kurenai's just giving her encouragement. So, she's scared to fight me? Naruto asked. I nodded slowly. More like she's afraid she won't perform well, but yeah, I slapped his shoulder. You're not going to take it easy on her though, right? No, why would I do that? Naruto asked. I nodded. Good, I'm thinking you and Hinata could teach a lot to each other while you spar. Oh, what do you and Anko-sensei learn from each other? Could Chiyo say no? I take it back, I take it back. I nodded and smirked, before dropping the genjutsu the moment Kurenai did the same for hers. I smiled at Naruto, and went over to watch with Kurenai. So, give him some encouragement? Kurenai asked. No, he wondered what you were up to, and I explained Hinata probably needed a pep talk. Then he teased me, for which I will think up a suitable response, I replied quietly. What did you tell Hinata? Kurenai just smiled, her scarlet eyes almost glowing in mischief. You'll see. I turned back to the pair. Hinata was in a Jiyuken stance, looking more sure-footed than I had thought she'd be. Her cheeks were bright red. Little surprise there. Naruto though was holding his hands up, elbows slightly bent, and his feet were placed in an unusual stance. I frowned. Wait a minute. Begin, Kurenai ordered, and Hinata struck first, hand snapping out at high speed. Naruto's hand snapped forward at an angle, managing to deflect the blow. I watched his movements carefully, confusion mounting. That was Jeet-kun do. How would Naruto? Oh, duh, where else? He'd seen me, sparring, with Anko, and, well. Truth be told, I didn't have a specific fighting style. I mean. I was originally the team medic, and I only had a rudimentary taijutsu foundation. My spider training didn't include a specific fighting style. Why would spiders need a martial arts style that a human could use? But it had made my other's reflexes incredibly fast and his body incredibly flexible, so I was decent now, even though I used a bastardized combination of martial arts. I had only learned Jeet-kun do for a few months, enough to know the basics. But it seemed even a basic style was better than what Naruto had been using. Naruto kept blocking Hinata's strikes, hitting her wrists away with each strike. Hinata then dropped down and slammed a palm into his stomach. Naruto choked, moving back. His hands formed a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hinata was immediately surrounded by Naruto's. She flashed through hand seals of her own. Byakugan, get her, they shouted, and attacked as one. Hinata lowered a hand, and dropped a smoke bomb to the ground. She was almost instantly obscured by the billowing smoke, and the Naruto clones fought furiously, blinded. I got her. No you dumbass. That's me. It was rather comical, especially when Hinata began annihilating the clones in quick succession. She was quite fast when she wanted to be. Even if she was considered too soft by her family, her taijutsu was very crisp and controlled. The smoke cleared, and only one Naruto remained. Hinata blushed, but held her stance ready. Sorry Naruto-kun, Hinata said. Naruto groaned, and held his chest. She stared. Naruto? My chest. Oh god. What did you do, Hinata? Naruto moaned, falling back. Hinata bent over to help. Which is what the real Naruto was apparently waiting for, as he burst out of the ground underneath and slammed a punch into Hinata's stomach. Oof. Hinata cried, as Naruto's clone slammed another blow into her from in front. Hinata fell back, hitting the ground. Ah, hey, Hinata-chan, you okay? Naruto asked, his grin instantly replaced with a look of worry. Hinata exchanged a glance with Kurenai, before she got back up. I am fine, she said. Her eyes then widened and she pointed at something over Naruto's shoulder. Oh my, what is that? Okay, I know Naruto is kind of dense, especially at this stage in the plot, but even he wouldn't. What? Where? Hinata, looking very guilty, struck Naruto several times in the back, making him fall flat on his face. My hand went to my own face, and I bit it as I tried very, very hard not to laugh. Ha 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 ha. Kiba laughed. Way to go, Hinata. Sakura and Sasuke both wore looks of disbelief. Clearly they too thought Naruto wasn't that gullible. On the other hand, Hinata was rather innocent looking. That whole Mulan meets Snow White thing. Ow. Naruto groaned. He got back up, and scowled at Hinata. Hey, that was a dirty trick to pull. Hinata mumbled, tapping her fingers together. So? You're the idiot who fell for it. Sakura shouted. Naruto looked over at me for support, and I grinned. Ninjas use whatever means at their disposal to win. If your enemy falls for it, then you exploit the advantage you've been given, period. Anyway, you did it first, Naruto. Quote, so, you mean, like damn it, Naruto shouted, as the shadow clone he'd had sneaking up behind Hinata was summarily dispatched by the dark-haired girl. How did you do that? 1. You gave yourself away, Sakura stated, and 2. She's a Hyuga. She has the Byakugan. Oh, the what now? Naruto asked. I am kind of glad that the anime sweat drop is indeed simply an artifact of the animation. That would be weird in ways ninja magic would fail to explain. However, if it wasn't, I can assure you we'd all be sporting one. Anyo, it's my Kekkei Genkei. I can see almost 340 degrees around myself, Hinata explained. Also, through physical objects, and I can also see chakra. Really? That's amazing. Naruto grinned. Tell me more, how would you like the chance to train and talk with Hinata more tonight? Kurenai asked. It came together in an instant. Kurenai had promised Hinata a date with Naruto to push her to fight at her best. I immediately shot Sakura and Sasuke with a glare, though I probably needn't have bothered. Sasuke looked impatient and bored, and Sakura, realizing that she might be free of Naruto if things worked out, was trying not to whoop in excitement. Why not right now? Naruto asked. Because I'm going to give you all a practical lesson against genjutsu. Then, you will be trained according to the strengths and weaknesses this session has revealed, Kurenai continued, very businesslike. That was the purpose of this exercise, to see where we need to improve. Really? New jutsu? Okay. Naruto grinned. I allowed Kurenai to handle this part of the meeting herself. My genjutsu knowledge was basic for a Junin. Many of my summons were very good with genjutsu, but as you might expect from spiders, the majority dealt with baiting or deceiving prey. All well and good for managing an enemy's attention, but not much variety beyond that. I had picked up a few tricks, but Kurenai was a specialist. Kurenai was a very good teacher, demonstrating the Kai technique that was used to disrupt genjutsu. She answered all of her and my students' questions in ways they could understand, and explained a few useful tactics for employing it. However, keep in mind that this essentially just disrupts a genjutsu, Kurenai explained. In combat, it's usually better to be aware of the genjutsu but be able to resist or counter it. Why not just break the genjutsu? Sasuke asked. Because then your enemy knows that you have done so. Most ninja will employ genjutsu to lure you into a trap or to allow them to approach to killing range, Kurenai explained. If you're able to deceive them into thinking their genjutsu is still working, then you can spring a counter ambush. She smiled. However, controlled bursts of the Kai technique can disrupt different parts of a genjutsu without letting your enemy know you've done it. This makes it easier for you to locate them. However, that requires very, very good chakra control. She then proceeded to place a few simple genjutsu on our students, so that they could break them with the technique. Unsurprisingly, Sakura was able to take out single genjutsu at a time without much trouble. Hinata, while having a higher chakra level than Sakura, was also able to accomplish the same feat, though she didn't really need to. Her Byakugan would let her see through most genjutsu. All the same, it was good practice. I should have known that Naruto would overdo it, but I was so interested in watching the lesson, I didn't realize Naruto was producing an excessive amount of chakra until it was too late. Naruto wait Kai. Naruto bellowed, and a shockwave of wind left him, making the trees shake overhead. In the distance, I could hear a few people shouting and yelling, and belatedly realized that not just ninja used genjutsu. No indeed, a fair amount of civilians used it too. Particularly women as a cosmetic substitute. Naruto's headband had actually flown off, landing on the ground. He looked about as surprised as everyone else did. I held in my laughter. Close. I think that almost did it. How about you try again with even more? The horrified looks I got in response were too much. I started laughing, and soon everyone else was too. Obviously, due to chakra's place in religion it was slow going, but if governments were anything, they were pragmatic when forced into a box. People in power like the status quo, and dislike revolutions. Benevolent self-interest saw a rise in standard of living for the elemental countries, as simple, useful technologies and chakra techniques were released in order for the majority to be happy, and not too curious about more dangerous ideas. For example, refrigerators were only found in commercial uses, or by the rich, but it facilitated trade, allowing fish to be transported inland, and medicine to travel further. Firearms were another interesting thing in this world. You didn't see them a whole lot in Konoha, for good reason. Kishimoto had said guns didn't exist in his world, but given his narrow focus of the elemental continent's ninjas, it's not surprising he didn't include them. Oh, they existed. Ninja didn't find much use for them. Jutsu were much more flexible, and although they were well aware of the power involved in gunpowder and lead, they preferred to train individuals to the point where guns were less useful than shuriken. The daimyo's armies and a fair number of private citizens had access to firearms, but outside of an ambush situation, most ninja would just avoid them, or use a replacement jutsu to evade. By no means were guns useless, especially in open war, but you had to really think about how best to use them. In a world with magic, they became one more tool in a strategist's toolbox, rather than the overwhelming power they became back home. Especially since the technology was still relatively rudimentary. They had developed past the front-loading musket, but an assault or sniper rifle, which would arguably be useful even against ninja, weren't even dreamt of yet. All of this added up to not being worthy of Kishimoto's attention, presumably. In any event, after Naruto's little chakra EMP, Kurenai and I took our teams to the Hokage's office in order to explain what had happened. Thankfully the Hokage seemed more amused than anything. Ho ho ho. So that was the source of all this commotion. He was referring to the crowd of upset women and men outside the tower who were complaining about the event. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and tried very hard to look innocent. Let's say that an experimental jutsu has gone awry, causing the disruption. That should allay any worries. I hope this provides a lesson to you all about the care that should go into practicing new techniques, yes? As our 6 students nodded, I felt, more than saw or heard, an Anbu slip out of the room to go run damage control. A tiny shiver ran down my spine. Kishimoto frequently made Anbu out to be chumps to be taken out at will by Akatsuki, but they really are scarily good. Furthermore, Andoryu-san, this joint training seems a wonderful venture. Did you have any further plans? Thank you, Hokage-sama. Following on from our last conversation, I thought it might be fruitful to train together from time to time. I had planned to do something similar with Team 10 in the next few days, and reach out to Maeda to see if he'd be interested. I believe the rest of the teams are older or contain Chunin, which would make integration trickier. Sarutobi nodded, stroking his beard. Yes, a fine idea. I'll arrange for another team to work with you all next week, and see about making an official framework for this sort of thing going forward. Our Chunin teams could stand to work better together as well. I kept my amusement to myself. If the twinkle in his eye was anything to go by, Junin-sensei weren't the only people eager to meddle with the romantic affairs of others. As I had said, there weren't that many all-genin teams. I, and more importantly to the Hokage, Kurenai, would almost certainly be seeing Asuma at the next meet-up. Speaking of romance, I was now standing in Naruto's apartment, watching the little ninja Jesus to be trying very hard not to fidget as Kokubogumo adjusted and worked on his new outfit, which he was currently modeling. How come I have to wear this stuff? Naruto asked. Girls like it when you dress up for a date, I explained. Means you want to look good for them. Yeah, but Sakura-chan never notices when I dress up nice, Naruto whined. Hold still, Kokubogumo admonished, as she used a little webbing to stick in a piece of fabric. Naruto resolutely tried to stay still even as he scowled. I sighed, this wouldn't be easy. Naruto, Sakura doesn't like you like that. She's hung up on Sasuke. You know this, I explained. Yeah, but I'm way better than he is. Naruto growled. How come she won't go out with me? Well, why do you want to go out with her? I asked. Naruto shrugged, making Kokubogumo hiss. He straightened up. Well, she's really pretty and strong and well. I think she's a lot of fun. Naruto enthused. Well, that did away with a couple of fan theories. I nodded. And, well, I really want her to like me, Naruto sighed. I don't see how this will help. I don't know Hinata, and well, why would she date me? Naruto, look, I said, walking over and kneeling down a bit to look him in the eyes, you're 12. All of you are, but we're ninja. Naruto protested. Yes, and? You're still kids. There's no need to expend all your effort in chasing after a girl who doesn't return your feelings, I said. Besides, what if you did get a date with Sakura, and it turned out that you had nothing in common? Sure we do. We both. Naruto thought about it for a while, his eyes closed in that odd fox-like grimace of his. "We're ninja," he finally said. "So is Hinata. And Sasuke and I for that matter. Give me more." It looked like I might be cracking through. He was actually thinking. "We're on the same team, in the same class," he went on. I nodded. "True, so is Sasuke. You can go out with him next week." "Hey, don't joke about that," Naruto squawked, more than likely remembering his unfortunate first kiss with his rival. "Fine, more things. What else do you have in common?" "Well, I waited patiently. Naruto's frown deepened. "Well, I don't have much in common with Hinata either," he finally protested. I smiled. "Progress. How would you know that? Have you talked to her before?" "No, but if that's the case, why go on a date with her?" Naruto asked. "Simple. Dating isn't the same as marrying someone. A first date is to have fun and find out more about someone, see if you have things in common," I said with a smile. "There's this idea called the 3-date rule. After 3 dates you should know whether or not that person is someone you want to keep being with. If they are, then you become boyfriend and girlfriend. If they aren't, you stop dating. But even if you stop dating, you might have a new friend." "Well, what about you and Enko-sensei?" Naruto asked. I coughed and shrugged. Well, as you get older, things get more complicated." I smiled brightly. "Fortunately you don't have to worry about all of that yet. Just go out and try to have fun." "And done," Kokubogumo said. "Hold still. I thought you said you were done." "Whoa," Naruto cried, as dozens of baby wolf spiders went up and down his body, knitting all of his clothing together with their fangs and forelegs. The finished product was quite nice, if I do say so myself. His pants and jacket were dark, almost black, cotton-lined with silk, and were cut to fit far better than his jumpsuit ever did. Indulging a bit in my fanfiction, his undershirt was an orange and long-sleeved silk garment, which would help stop kunai or shuriken from getting through. Finally, his ninja sandals had been replaced with black, ninja sneakers, another indulgence of my fanfiction, which put steel toes and heels covered by silk and leather into normal sandals. Kokubogumo had made all my clothing, and I intended her to make clothes for my team. There were several ways to build camaraderie in a military unit, and matching uniforms were a tried and true method. Besides, it looked cool. Naruto looked more than pleased when he saw himself in the mirror. This is awesome," he enthused. He looked at me with a hopeful expression. Can I keep them?" I smiled. "Of course you can. You're my student, after all. I only look as good as my students do." "Oh, so are you going to make some for Sakura-chan, and Sasuke too?" he asked. I nodded. "She's already working on it," I explained, and indeed, Kokubogumo was already working on them while her babies scurried about, carrying needles and silken thread. "Thank you very much, Kokubogumo," I said, and glanced at Naruto meaningfully. The blonde's mouth formed an "oh" of understanding, and he bowed to her. "Thank you very much, Kokubogumo," he added. "You're welcome," Kokubogumo replied. "Now, how many of these will you be needing?" "Enough to replace his current wardrobe, and a few in a few larger sizes," I said. "Same with the others. Couldn't you have Origumo handle all this?" Kokubogumo asked. I smiled back. "I could, but I like your work better," I said. "Flatterer," Kokubogumo harumphed, but she looked pleased. I checked my watch and grimaced. "Come on Naruto, get going or you're going to be late," I said. I handed him some money. "Don't forget the flowers and the dinner reservations." "Right sensei," Naruto said cheerfully as he leapt out the window. "Night, have a good time," I shouted after him. I shook my head and sighed. "Well, showtime, later Kakubo," I shouted, as I took off after him. You don't really think I just let Naruto go off on his first date without some supervision, do you? After all, a Junin instructor's duty is to help his student in all areas of life, including with women. Besides, I wasn't going to be alone. My other students were approaching. "Sensei," called out Sakura. I stopped on a rooftop near the Hyuga mansion, and turned to see a beaming Sakura and an unhappy Sasuke both catching up. "Good. Bring the camera?" I asked. Sakura held hers up with a grin. "Got it. Bring the food?" I asked Sasuke. With a deeper scowl, he held up a picnic basket. "Excellent," I said, grinning, before turning and sitting on the edge. My students sat with me, Sakura no doubt elated at being with her crush and with Naruto being far away. "I still don't see why we're doing this," Sasuke grunted. I always get to see that idiot make a fool out of himself. Yeah, but photographic evidence is a lot better, I explained. Besides, learning how to date is important for any young man or woman. Sakura blushed and smiled at Sasuke. Sasuke glanced at her and snorted. I'd rather not know. Sakura scowled. Sasuke. I snorted in amusement, give it a few years, kid. I already do missions with her, Sasuke stated flatly. Yeah, but it's different from dating, Sakura insisted. Why would I want to do that anyway? So you and Sensei and the dead last can photograph me too? Sasuke asked. You could date me, Sasuke, Sakura suggested. No, Sasuke said automatically. Sakura scowled. What's wrong with just one date? You, for one, Sasuke stated. There's nothing wrong with dating me. I am a good date. Sakura insisted. Below, Naruto walked down the street, carrying some flowers as he approached the compound. You're always talking, Sasuke said. It's annoying. Admittedly, I was expecting Sakura to just wilt at that. But, ninja, Hermione reared her head, and Sakura's expression became dangerous. Well, you're never talking. It's boring, Sakura said. Sasuke blinked, but rallied quickly. Then shouldn't you leave me alone? Maybe if you contributed to the conversation a little, I wouldn't be annoying, Sakura said. What would I talk about? Sasuke replied. Anything. Talk about the weather for all I care, Sakura insisted. And would you stop doing that? It makes you sound stupid. Sakura growled. Sasuke's mouth actually dropped open for a moment, and he looked over at Sakura. Stupid? Yes, stupid, like you can't say anything so you just grunt. Like a caveman. As entertaining as it was to watch them argue, I did have another student to monitor. Naruto got to the door, rang the bell, and waited. I then pulled out 3 radio headsets and put one on. What are those? Sasuke asked. Radios. I bugged him, I said, completely straight-faced. Sakura and Sasuke stared. That was horrible, sensei, Sakura said after a moment. Sasuke agreed. It wasn't a joke, I said. You aren't wrong there, Sasuke agreed. Kachiyose no jutsu, I said. Hi Sakura. Hey, your eyes are black. Eep. Sakura fell back as Ringumo clung to her face, and Sasuke was doing his frozen in horror expression as Fangumo, one of Rinamo's numerous, and I do mean numerous, sisters, examined his eyes carefully. Shush, I said to my students. It's starting. The door to the compound opened, and Naruto entered. While Ringumo and Fangumo dug into the carcass of a rabbit I brought them, my much quieter students and I listened in. Uzumaki Naruto. Welcome to our home, intoned a rather stoic voice. I recognized it as Hiyoshi's. Thank you. Where's Hinata? Naruto asked. She'll be along in a moment, Naruto said. Kurenai? What's she doing there? Sakura asked. I shrugged. Probably helping Hinata with the date, just like I was helping Naruto. There were a few more minutes of small talk, Hiyashi and Kurenai both questioning Naruto on a few things. I smirked a little as they played good cop and bad cop. Hiyashi being direct and forceful with a slight edge of menace, and Kurenai being kind and understanding and slightly guiding Naruto's answers. It was amazing how well they worked together, actually. Almost like they'd done this before. Nah, couldn't be like that. Sure, Hiyashi was widowed, but seriously, that wasn't a crack pairing, that was a shrooms pairing. Perhaps they'd been on a mission together at some point. Or they were both just that good at social combat. It was a useful skill in the less violent jobs we sometimes had to do. Here I am. Dead silence for a bit. Hey Hinata. Wow, you look great. Naruto enthused loudly. A little too loudly, even for him. Thank you, Hinata replied. Now, get going. Kurenai gently pushed. Don't be late. Have a good time. Naruto sounded a bit anxious, and it wasn't hard to see why when they emerged. Hinata was on his arm, blushing and smiling in a very nice blue yukata. I felt Sasuke stiffen and Sakura's eyes widened in shock on either side of me. Where did those come from? Sakura mumbled. Wouldn't get many of those to the kilo, said Sasuke under his breath, whose attention was suddenly much higher than it had been a few minutes ago. Sakura noticed. Stop that. Sakura hissed. What? Sasuke asked. Sensei, Sasuke is perving on Hinata. Sakura growled. I am not. Sasuke retorted. He totally was. I would have at that age. Well, considering you were ogling Naruto earlier, I said dryly. Sakura's cheeks turned bright red. I was not. Call me a pervert, Sasuke snorted. I am not. He's just got a nice outfit. Sensei was saying we'll both have them soon. Like mother like daughter, Sasuke went on. Sakura whacked Sasuke upside the head. Sasuke stared in disbelief, and I couldn't blame him. Sakura had been reverting a little more back to her pre-sleepover persona. Apparently pissing her off brought out inner more often. She glared at me. I talked to mom. She tends bar some weekends for the cash. She says your brother got tossed out after getting into a huge fight with some guy. And now he's spreading rumors about her and the bouncer. Huh, I nodded. That sounds like Ben all right. Sorry, but you can't pick your relatives, right? Sakura frowned, but nodded. If we're doing this, we'd better go. Sasuke pointed at the distant pair of daters. Oh, come on, we're going to lose them, Sakura ordered and set off. You're right, let's move, I agreed. Sasuke nodded quickly, and he headed after her. Do we get more food, Endo-kun? Ringumo asked cutely. Her sister looked equally hopeful. I smiled. Yes you do. Yay. The two spiders cheered, before jumping up to my shoulders. I set out after my students, until we were looking over a very nice restaurant. I had taken care to choose one set up after the Kyuubi attack, in order to get Naruto fair service. While Naruto was never outright refused service at various stores, unless someone happened to be with him, he tended to get poor service. The care and attention showed by the staff here though, that was a little odd. They treated the two like royalty, getting them their table in moments and their orders underway. It was a bit odd. Sure, Hinata was essentially village royalty, but there was a bit of anxiety in their movements. Maybe Kurenai had intimidated them? I hadn't seen it myself, given I'd never been a target of her ire, but the genjutsu mistress was apparently inventively scary when pushed. My eyes flitted to a large party in the restaurant near Hinata and Naruto's table. Lots of people were packed at the tables, surrounding a couple. A man with red hair and a long-haired brunette woman. My blood went cold as I saw her. Both of them, actually. Sensei? Sakura asked. I slowly rose. So did the man, and he looked around with a smile at his guests. Attention everyone. We invited you all out here to make an announcement, he said. He gestured to his wife with a proud smile. Sheena is pregnant. We're having a baby. Applause filled the receiver, and I pulled it away. Sensei? Sakura pressed. Stay here, I mumbled, as I jumped down to the street below. I knew this was a bad idea, but I felt compelled as soon as I saw her. I entered the restaurant, and Sheena's eyes caught sight of me. Her face brightened. I never could think straight around her. In either world. And or you, she said happily. I nodded to her and to the rest of the people. They were all so very familiar between both of my memories, syncing up nearly perfectly. This actually just made things worse, especially when her spouse rose and offered his hand. And or you. I'm glad you made it, he said. Tomu, I returned. The feelings were exactly the same when it came to this man between realities. Rage, murderous, seething rage. In this world I actually could carry out the murder fantasies I had toyed with, and I had to remind myself that killing this man in front of his pregnant wife was not a good idea. Several times. I guess you missed the announcement then, Tomu grinned. Sheena looked a bit concerned. Always could see through me. Sheena's. I'm pregnant, his wife interrupted. She smiled happily. I'm glad you remembered this time, she said. I know you're very busy. Right, remembered. Sure I did. Was I just God's punching bag or something? Seeing these two together was bad enough. Yes, well, congratulations, I managed. Sheena nodded. So, will you stay for dinner? We're paying for it, she said. Got a nice bonus at work, it's worth it, Tomu said. I already had dinner, I just wanted to give my congratulations, I quickly tried to cover. Now that I was here, I realized this was the last place I wanted to be. Tomu chuckled. You know Andoryu, I keep getting the idea you don't like me, he joked. Well, that might be the first idea you've ever had that wasn't completely idiotic. Ahem. Well, it's good you're here, Sheena said with a smile. I was wondering. That is. It's twins, so, we were wondering if you'd like to be their godfather? Tomu asked with a smile. Or just take one. There's two after all. Hope they take after me. Get nice girls, just like I did, he joked. That urge to stab him to death just got worse, to the point I actually began flexing my wrists, ready to slip a pair of daggers out into my hands. Looking over at Sheena helped, but not that much. She looked so very hopeful. I sighed and closed my eyes. If you don't want to, she began. I'll do it. I'm honored, I managed. Tomu, oblivious Tomu, smiled and clapped me on the shoulder. Great. Why don't you sit down, have some food? I noticed Naruto and Hinata. They'd been watching the whole time. Damn, I was screwing this up on every level. Can't, I said. My student is on a date. Wouldn't want to cramp his style, I said. Both looked over at Naruto. Tomu's eyebrows went up, but Sheena smiled. Oh, would you care to join us? She asked politely. That got a fair number of looks. Well, we're kind of on a date, Naruto said. Hinata nodded, and reached over, placing her hand over Naruto's. My blonde student blushed. Yes, we are, Hinata managed. Oh, right, of course. Have fun then, Tomu said with a smile. Naruto nodded. Thanks. Hey, sensei, you want to eat with us? Naruto's lack of social awareness was my only lifeline, and in this instance, I'd gladly grab a hold. Hinata bit her lower lip, clearly looking back and forth between us. Before she softly sighed, and nodded. Sure, I'd like that, I said quickly. I nodded to them both, and forced my eyes not to linger on either of them, as I went over to Naruto and Hinata's table. I pulled up a chair, and sat down. Tomu and Sheena went back to the party. Sheena looked over her shoulder at me, before nodding and following her husband. Sensei? Naruto muttered. I'm so sorry about this. I know them. Things get complicated when you get older, I explained. Naruto blinked. Oh, he looked over at Tomu. You want me to prank him or something? I snorted, don't tempt me. I don't want you getting into trouble on my behalf. You and her? Hinata asked quietly. I glanced over at her, and she flushed. I sighed. It's a long story. Naruto scowled. You have a lot of those. Yes, I do. You get more of those with age as well, I said, before replacing myself with a shadow clone. I slipped out the bag, and headed up to where Sasuke and Sakura were. As they looked at me, I belatedly realized they had heard every word. At least they were trying to pretend they hadn't. There was that. I settled in, watching Hinata and Naruto's date continue. It actually seemed to go pretty well from then on, as their conversation became more fluid and more natural. My shadow clone nursed a drink, waiting for the party to become distracted before giving Naruto and Hinata his thanks and walking off to dispel. Me, well, I kept my focus on them. And off the party nearby. Every ninja has their weakness. It's no different for me. And with this, I turned my thoughts towards future problems, in order to avoid thinking about the past. I will admit, I brooded a lot until Naruto and Hinata were done with their meal. And, as it took them nearly 2 hours to finish, I did a lot of brooding. To the point Sasuke actually commented on it. Sensei, stop it. Stop what? Sasuke's eyes narrowed. I looked over at Sakura, who had a similar scowl. Sorry, Sasuke, you don't have a monopoly on brooding. Don't be rude, Sensei. Sakura's scowl deepened. Look, you know you can trust us, right? Can't you tell us what's wrong? I don't want every meeting of ours to involve someone's tragic backstory, I said flatly. Ah, so it is tragic, Sakura sussed out with a nod. So, did that woman break your heart or something? Her expression softened as I said nothing. Oh God, that's what happened. And, now she's pregnant with that guy. Sensei, that's horrible. I frowned. No, that's life. It just sucks when it happens to you. Does everything with you involve trauma or tragedy? Sasuke asked flatly. Look who's talking, Avenger, I snorted. Sasuke scowled. That's different. And at least I don't talk about it every meeting. You wear it on your sleeve in almost every action you take. Ah, don't do this, Endo-kun. Ringumo whined as she crawled up my back and sat on my shoulder. You're no fun when you're depressed over her. I do not get depressed over her, I said flatly. He gets so depressed he just lays in his web and doesn't throw my ball at all, Ringumo confided. Gumo-chan, I growled. Not throwing our ball is very mean, Fangumo added, crawling up to my other shoulder. No, not throwing my ball is very mean, Ringumo corrected her sister. Then what is not throwing my ball? Fangumo demanded. More ball throwing for me, Ringumo said, and blew the spider version of a raspberry. Endo-kun, Ringumo is being mean to me. Fangumo whined. I'm not. Fangumo is too dumb to know you like me best and that it's my ball. Ringumo retorted. I sighed, and formed 2 balls out of webbing. Fetch, I said, tossing them behind me. Ball. The sister spiders cheered, and raced after them. Sasuke just raised his eyebrows. I shrugged. They're easily pleased, but you can understand why I only summon a few of them at a time, I said. How many are there? Sakura asked. Their generation? About 300. I'm not on first-name terms with them all, I explained. Sakura's eyes bugged out, and Sasuke stared. 300? She cried. I nodded. It's actually on the low end. Jirugamo's species usually lays from 400 to 500 eggs. Are they all like that? Sasuke asked. I smirked. Those two are among the most bubbly, but the least, shall we say, affectionate, I confided. Affectionate? Sakura asked, making a face. Well, you have to understand, the Joru clan of spiders are shapeshifters, I explained. That is their greatest strength, the ability to turn into almost anything, like a natural henge. Given that the majority of them are female, and have reached UAL maturity, my expression darkened, and are very fond of me. Sasuke shuddered. Fangirls. Bingo. But you don't have to worry about your fangirls eating you. I'm not certain about that. Oh come on, we are not that bad, Sakura snorted. She backtracked at Sasuke's look. And not that I'm a fangirl. No, not a fangirl at all. I smirked, enjoying my students bickering again. Hey, the less attention they paid to my tragic past, the less I had to think about it. Down below, Tomu gave his wife and mother of his children a kiss. My scowl deepened. Bastard, why do I only get the crazy women and spiders after me? At last, Naruto and Hinata left the restaurant. We followed from the rooftops, my summons clutching onto my shoulders. They seemed to be hitting it off, Sakura commented with a smile. I looked down closely, and had to smile. Even after a couple of hours, the two of them were still excitedly talking. About things they'd seen in the academy, Naruto's pranks mostly. A little about life in the village, favorite things. Even some taijutsu advice and thoughts on jutsu popped up. You wouldn't think Hinata would open up so easily, but maybe it's because she didn't have many chances in canon. Which brought me to another problem I had been trying to put off, but when I'm depressed I start thinking about very serious, dark things. Namely, what the hell was I going to do? I had a lot of dangerous information at my disposal, but only a vague idea of how to use it. The fact that I now had an emotional investment in this world, these people, just made it more complicated. I glanced over at Sasuke, who snorted as Naruto tripped on the sidewalk and nearly fell over. I had made a few little changes, and he seemed a little more at ease with his team, a little closer to it. He'd been bested in training, which I will admit was a surprise. Until Kurenai admitted she'd had Guy give Shino some help in his taijutsu. Then it made a lot more sense. The thing was, he still wanted revenge on his brother, and that road could very easily turn completely and totally dark, just as it had in canon. Especially if Orochimaru got his cursed seal on him. What could I do about that? I was coming up empty. For all my skills, I was no match for Orochimaru. Period. End of story. Even superior tactics and an ambush can only go so far against a foe who is so much stronger, faster, and more experienced than me. Assuming I could come up with superior tactics, which was unlikely. The older the ninja, the more experienced and powerful they were. Fuck that bullshit Kakashi spouted post-time skip. 9 times out of 10, the more experienced ninja wastes the less experienced. Except in cases dealing with Naruto, but that was Naruto. Pratchett called it narrative causality, the internet called it plot armor. I was living here now, I couldn't call it anything because I couldn't rely on it. So that left the question of what could I do? I had a few options. I could tell the Hokage I suspected Orochimaru would infiltrate the Chunin exams to get his hands on Sasuke. On what evidence? He would ask. Ah, right, I had none, not even so much as a hunch. I could capture Kabuto, get information out of him. Except I had no experience in breaking prisoners and that kind of thing took time. Besides, Kabuto was a twisted son of a bitch, and was possibly as strong as myself. He had his own agenda. Hell, even throwing him into the spider plane might not break him. The spider plane, of which I was the sage. The boss clan of which were the Joru spiders, who were masters of disguise. I was handed the keys to solving all my problems from the moment I got here, and I only just now realized it. Jesus, maybe Harry Potter was right. Wizards can't do logic to save their lives, and apparently, neither can ninja. Ball Endo, Ball. Ringumo and Fangumo chanted. I looked over at them. Gumo-chan, Fan-chan. I have a mission for you. Do we get to play ball after? Fangumo asked. I nodded. If you succeed, I'll get you both your own balls to play with. All the time. The little spider's eyes seemed to grow larger. Ando-kun. They cried, and leapt onto me to glomp me. Ack! I cried. Sasuke and Sakura smirked a little. How cute, and disgusting, Sakura quipped. I can always allow you to share in the experience, you know, I said flatly. They have 298 brothers and sisters. I think I'll pass, Sasuke said, almost apologetic. I look at my summons. I worked my jaw a little, and fed a little chakra into my tongue. Okay, you too. There is a medic nin by the name of Yakushi Kabuto. He wears glasses, has silver hair, is around 17, tends to wear purple. I want you two to watch him, and make sure he doesn't know you're doing it. I explained in the language of the spiders. Yes, I was an arachne tongue? I don't know. It wasn't as useful as parcel mouth though. You could only speak to summons with it, and the only way to gain it was to survive being bitten by the spider boss herself. Which I did, and how I survived is another story. Good God, is it another story. But it was good for relating secret commands to my summons. What did it sound like? Well, it's hard to describe in text. It was a mix of sounds and smells, and to do it I had to channel chakra into a few places in my head and throat and hold it, like holding my breath underwater. Clicks, hisses, cracks, little spitting sounds and other things like that seemed to form the basic syntax. The pheromone component involved various glands in my body I had to temporarily reprogram, using chakra to emit the right sense. What are we watching him for? Fangumo asked. I think he's a traitor and a spy, working for Orochimaru. A spy? You suspect him? Ringumo asked. Yes. Why? Fangumo asked innocently. It's complicated. He's a spy. Dangerous. I need to know what he's doing, I said. The two spiders agreed. We won't fail you, Endo-kun. Ringumo said. Right. Fangumo shouted. The two headed off. Sakura and Sasuke were staring at me. You speak spider? Sakura managed. I shrugged. Yep, comes in handy sometimes. Only works with summons though, I said. When are you going to teach us how to do that? Sasuke asked. I shrugged. When I think you're ready to be bitten by the spider boss. Now, hush. Here comes the finale. Naruto and Hinata had made it to her clan compound door. Naruto's face fell when he realized the date was over, and he turned to stare with a nervous smile at Hinata. Well, this is it, Naruto said. Why yes it is, Hinata said. The two preteens stared at each other. I grinned. The tension, the uncertainty. It's all growing, bubbling up, and it can end in only one of two ways. Sasuke snorted. And those are? Kiss or awkward goodbye, I said. Can't a kiss also be awkward? Sakura asked. I sighed. Fine then, 3 ways. Well then. Naruto began, his smile growing a little strained. Hinata's fingers were tapping together rapidly, showing off just how nervous she really was. Or Hinata could just faint, Sasuke added flatly. I rolled my eyes. All right, yes, there are potentially dozens of ways this could end. Happy? I noticed some movement out of the corner of my eye, and saw Kurenai enter Hinata's line of sight, but kept hidden from Naruto. She smiled encouragingly, and seemed to be giving Hinata some pre-arranged signal. Hinata trembled, blushed, and nodded. She then moved forward, and kissed Naruto. Clearly, even from here, she was aiming for his cheek, but she hit his lips instead. Naruto's face turned bright red in turn, and Hinata's wasn't much better. GG good night, she squeaked, before turning and hurrying into the compound. The door shut behind her, leaving a rather shocked Naruto. He then smiled, and turned straight into a wall. I chuckled, even as Sakura cheered. Yes, no more of him begging me for dates. This was worth it, completely, totally. Yep, I said. After all, why would he pursue you, when Hinata seems pretty nice to him? Sakura's face fell, and she stared down at Naruto. Sasuke, who had looked horrified at the prospect of Sakura's attention not constantly being distracted by Naruto, now looked confused and horrified. Confide? Horror-fused? Ooh, I like that one. I looked at Sasuke and winked with a smirk. Well, yeah, that's great, Sakura mumbled. Sasuke met my eyes, and he understood. Guess that Genius title wasn't for nothing. Well, I'm beat, I said, rising. Good night you too. See you bright and early tomorrow. I turned and headed off, having no idea just what kind of events I had set in motion. But then, did I ever? With a week until the next inter-team event, I threw my students back into training and completing D ranks. Having had several days to attempt tree walking, I introduced the idea of water walking. Not even Sakura managed that immediately, and I figured that between the two techniques and the jutsu I had given them, my 3 students would be kept busy for the foreseeable future. Predictably, Naruto had complained about the lack of destructive potential, but I had an easy response. Let me get this straight, you don't want to walk on water? Have fun swimming then. Meanwhile, my intelligence web, was keeping an eye out for Tazuna, as well monitoring Kabuto. He was ridiculously good at maintaining cover, and if I wasn't already certain, I would have thought he was exactly as he pretended. What a goody-goody cover too. He worked at the hospital, volunteered for the poor and with orphanages, and even visited his sickly adopted grandmother. It was disgusting how this was the same man who helped Orochimaru vivisect living specimens, warp dozens of individuals with biological and chakra experiments, and eventually go on to raise an entire undead army consisting of every single ninja who had died in the last century. How did he even know about some of them? Probably lazy writing on Kishimoto's part. I vowed Kabuto would never get the chance to perfect the impure resurrection technique in the first place. At the moment though, we were putting a new roof on for a client, and Sakura was doing a great job of organizing things. All right, Naruto, get to work loading up the wood. Sasuke, start hammering. Go go go, Sakura commanded, looking at the plans for the new roof our client had requested. I sat back, not wanting to distract my students. I sure as hell hated somebody looking over my shoulder all the time, and I imagined my students liked it no better. Naruto set to work with his clones, but Sasuke was staring right at me. He walked away from the job and right up to me. Yes, Sasuke? I asked. We need to talk, Sasuke stated. I nodded and looked at Sakura. Keep it going, Sakura, we'll be right back, I said. Sakura nodded and scowled when she saw Naruto slacking off. Hey, get going already. Just because Sasuke gets a break doesn't mean you do. Right, Sakura-chan, the clone sighed. He didn't respond as eagerly as he usually did. Maybe Hinata was rubbing off on him a little. Sasuke twitched very slightly at Sakura's voice, to which I repressed a smirk. We moved out of sight of the house, and I crossed my arms across my chest to look at my student. What is it? He fixed me with a flat stare. Why haven't you taught me anything? I raised my eyebrows. In all honesty, I should have expected something like this. Looking over my behavior, I had focused pretty heavily on Naruto because, let's face it, he needed a lot of work. Even so, I hadn't been horribly uneven. I've taught you many things. The 10 basic camping jutsu. You also taught Sakura and Naruto that. I taught you how to tree and water walk. The other 2, I tried a new tactic. Ah, I see. You don't want to know things, you want preferential treatment. That's not it at all. He glared. You came to me and said I hadn't taught you anything. I just gave you a list, and you complained that I taught those things to your teammates. Did you think Kakashi woke up one morning with a burning desire to help you with those fire jutsu? I asked him to help because I know our specialties don't overlap very well. Then why don't I go learn from him? Be my guest. See how far you get with him. Kakashi is an excellent ninja, but he's kind of a rubbish human. He means well, but he can't be bothered to care about anything less than a B-rank mission. He was going to train your team, but it was decided I'd be better. I admit that this was somewhat unfair to Kakashi. I've seen various defenses of his teaching style, from, how was he supposed to know the world would go batshit crazy in a few years to, he tried to teach the fundamentals early on, right up to, Kakashi was the bestest teacher ever, you don't get his genus. 1. Kakashi is human, and did a decent job with what he had available to him, but he is broken in some ways. Most of us ninja are. He couldn't really connect with kids, because he never got to be one. There's probably a Michael Jackson joke in there somewhere, but even if I fished it out it would doubtless be in bad taste. I need to excel. No, you want to excel, as does everyone. I sighed. Sasuke, look, you have no shortage of jutsu or skill in taijutsu, I told him. You're not the rookie of the year for nothing. What you do need is practice in utilizing those skills, especially as part of a team. Sasuke's frown deepened. I shrugged. Look, nobody can do everything, and quite frankly, loners don't do well as ninja. Yes they do, Sasuke growled. I stared at him. Sasuke, that's Itachi, not you. I poked him in the forehead, which made him freeze. Ninja cheat. In your quest for vengeance, do you want to become your brother? You saw my sensei, right? Well, at least he had the decency to show what he was on the outside. My gaze was grim. That kind of power always comes with a price. And even if you succeed in what you want to do with that kind of power, trust me, it isn't worth it. You're wrong, Sasuke replied immediately, anger burning deep in those black eyes of his. Do you think your brother is happy? Always on the run? Unable to stay anywhere for any length of time? Unable to trust anyone, knowing they could turn on you in a heartbeat? I shook my head. That approach wasn't going to work. Sasuke, have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, he wanted you to think that way? Think about it. What do you gain if you become just as bad as he is? Nothing but vengeance. What does he gain? So what should I do? Sasuke growled. Let Itachi get away with what he did to my clan. I'm not saying you shouldn't get stronger, I said. Nor that you shouldn't kill him. It would be nigh on impossible to explain to him about Madara and the other things right now, so I'd use the common perception. What I am saying though is that it shouldn't be the only thing in your life. Or that you have to fight alone, I added. Other than our 4 Hokage, who are the most famous Konoha ninja? The Sannin and Itachi, Sasuke said immediately. I nodded. Sure, there were others who ought to be on that list, Madara, the White Fang, hell, my sensei had been well known before he went mad, but from the viewpoint of a fresh genin, he was right. Yes, the Sannin, the 3 ninja, not the 3 lone wolves. Not, wow, they became S-ranked badasses overnight completely on their own without ever being in a team. Itachi spent time on a team, then spent time on a team in Anbu. Sasuke stared at me, and looked away, thinking it over. I then hit upon the perfect thing to say. Let me tell you about a man named Bruce Wayne. So I told him all about Batman, how he was forged in the alley of a distant city, with the bodies of his parents lying before him. How he took the bat as his symbol and used it to bring fear to the criminal underbelly. How he seemed mad but was probably the sanest person alive. How he considered himself alone, but had actually built a family around himself. Now, I may not be much of anything in our world, but one thing I'm pretty good at is storytelling. Especially when I had decades of the finest writers to crib off of. I was able to hold Sasuke's attention for at least an hour. That's tough to do with anyone, and if you haven't worked with kids, well, lucky you. After I was done, I gave him the rest of the day off and asked him to just think about what I'd said. Look, power for power's sake is stupid, but you know you can't fight him now, right? Sasuke just gave me a look, not even bothering to respond. Then for right now, just focus on training. Later you can figure out what to do with it. Your brother is strong enough that I doubt he's going to go down to some random schmuck. You have time. Go think on it, yeah? He gave a grudging nod and left. Did I think it would change him immediately? Of course not. I wasn't a miracle worker. Did I think it would plant the seeds of resistance to Orochimaru in his mind? Probably. If I couldn't do better than Kakashi, while knowing what was going to happen, well, God help us. I didn't think we were as good as we could be, but it was certainly better than canon. Even if Sakura did still beat Naruto up and Sasuke still sniped at the both of them, it was without true rancor. I found myself, and Team 7, in one of the archive buildings the following day, organizing old, unclassified records. It was boring, but useful for them to learn, especially Naruto. Not that he couldn't read, but he could definitely improve, especially regarding speed. Sakura felt right at home of course, quickly coming to grips with the organization system. Thankfully, since my understanding of it was limited, and I had forgotten some since the last time I had been sent down here. Ah, Andoryu-kun, it's been so long nephew. I turned to the voice, I knew it well. The juxtaposition of what I knew about this man, and what my other knew though, was so severe, I felt like I had the bends. Danzo Shimura, my father's good friend, and my uncle. This was awkward. Ah, uncle, it's been too long. I've been busy with my new team. I waved my arm as if to show them off. Yes, I'd heard of that. Your very own team. I can remember when you were knee-high, he said with a smile. He always was good at playing the smiling politician in public. And I do believe you got the team. Uchiha, Uzumaki, and Haruno. I've heard good things. Tell me, how did you steal them away from Kakashi? My students had stopped for a moment, but I motioned for them to keep working. Well, the thing with Kakashi, he can't be bothered by anything less than a B rank, can he? I think he didn't want the hassle of a team. How many has he failed now? I asked. Too many. Having a team would do him good, Danzo observed. I nodded in agreement. Oh well, he continued, his loss is your gain. I waved my team over now for introductions. This is Shimura-san, a family friend and advisor to the Hokage, as well as liaison to the army, and many other positions, I explained. You make me sound grand, he waved off my description. They bowed and introduced themselves. Haruno Sakura, nice to meet you sir. Uchiha Sasuke, nice to meet you sir. Hi, Uzumaki Naruto, nice to meet sensei's friends. Danzo nodded politely, his smile becoming fractionally warmer. Like all his actions, it was perfectly calculated and measured. Think of pouring a bit more warm water into the tea, balancing out the flavor and temperature. Except the warmth was a means to an end, only there long enough to do what it had to do, then gone. It is good to see the youth of the Leaf is so courteous. I'm sure you'll all do very well. Especially under Sume. His father and I go back a long way. Pay attention to his advice, Danzo said. I smiled back, and we continued to make inane small talk. My expression was friendly enough, but my thoughts were racing as fast as my synapses could fire. The sad thing is, he was absolutely right. Danzo and my father had worked together since well before the last ninja war, helping to coordinate between the regular troops of fire and the shinobi. My other's memories were filled of this man visiting our home when I was a child, talking with my father and mother as cordially as you please, even receiving gifts and letters from him as I grew older. He'd been a supporter of mine ever since I started training to become a ninja. Not a full-on sponsor, but his word had opened doors normally closed to a first-generation ninja. I had earned every bit though. I had worked hard to get where I was, taking and succeeding in many difficult missions, before and after I recovered from my year on the spider plane. Danzo had been part of that too, visiting me in the hospital in person. I even still had a congratulatory letter from him on the day I became a Junin, filled with advice and warm wishes. Ninja and the Fire Army had a complicated, but crucial relationship, and the two men were the best liaisons between the two groups. My father was a proponent of soft strength, economic might backed up by enough military might to defend Fire Country and its interests, with violence as a resort but always the last resort. Danzo was ever the war hawk, but they both respected each other's views, for the most part. I believe that as my father was not a ninja, and therefore not a true threat, his was one of the few true friendships that Danzo had ever made. And so as far as my other was concerned, Uncle Danzo may have had strained relationships with people like the third Hokage, but he'd chalked it up to simple political tensions. That happened, even between the oldest of friends, the price of power and influence. But knowing what I did now about Danzo, about everything he had done, outside of Madara, there were few people I had canon knowledge of stirring up more shit in the elemental nations. Pain could be laid directly on his doorstep, just for starters. The Uchiha clan massacre, he had a hand in that, and an arm, and 3 or 6 eyes. He'd tried to assassinate Sarutobi. Reading the manga, that last had been confusing. How had that not ended him right there? But now in the world, I had context. Those had been tests by Danzo to see if Sarutobi was still up to the task of Hokage, arranged and recognized as such. If he'd really wanted Sarutobi dead, he'd have done it himself, and both parties knew it. Sure, Danzo wanted to rule, but he wasn't going to just weaken Leaf without it being damn necessary. Such conviction was impressive, and if he had better judgment, I'd be impressed. Perhaps I was biased. Knowing the horrible outcomes from his unsanctioned antics made it easy to condemn them in retrospect, but I doubt I would have agreed with them in the moment as well. The truth was, Danzo was alive because he had made himself so critically important to so many people, both in and outside of Konoha. Sarutobi ignored the attempted hit on him so that Danzo could keep the wheels turning. Hell, he was important to me. The me of this world, anyway. I was tempted to put him on the same list as Kabuto. The other me recoiled at the thought. Most of his damage had already been wrought, some before I was born. And or you? I started and noticed the old warhawk was staring at me in concern. Are you all right? I didn't have to do anything for now. Sorry, reminiscing. I still have your letter from when I made Jonin, I replied. He grinned. I was proud. You proved yourself, and continue to do so. Ah, but have you read Rei's new book? I nodded. Yes. I've lent it to Sakura. In fact, she's a fan of my father's. Sakura blushed prettily, and beamed up at Danzo. Why yes. It's nice to read something about how ninjas and the regular world work together. Most other things I've read have just been about ninja abilities and powers, but not the larger implications of their use. Naruto's eyes were glazing over. Sasuke, who had been raised with better manners, was only doing slightly better at hiding his boredom. Ho, maybe you'll take over for me when I retire. Danzo complimented her. She beamed, wriggling a bit at the praise. She hadn't gotten a lot of that in canon, it was no wonder she soaked it up like a sponge. I could sense Naruto was going to break soon, his foot was tapping up a storm. Back to work, I want to do another mission after this. I'm sure you can listen to us chat about things again soon. Naruto bounced off immediately. Yes sir. The relief was palpable. Sasuke went too, better at hiding it, but he was glad to be going back to work. Sakura had to drag herself back, but managed. Danzo shook his head in understanding. That's fine, Andoryu. I have things to attend to as well. We must have lunch sometime. We should, I said with a nod. I gave him a wry look. A suspicion of my other had arisen, helping to center me and disguise my misgivings. He read that part of me immediately, and thankfully, leapt to the wrong conclusion. And no, I had nothing to do with your assignment to Team 7, he stated unequivocally. I shrugged, though inside I felt very relieved I wasn't just Anakin Skywalker to his Palpatine. So far, getting one over copycat Kakashi does make one question things, I admitted. Danzo chuckled softly, like brown leaves rustling in the breeze. I will admit, I am far more confident in you to handle this team than in him, he intimated. And it was nice to see one of Sarutobi's favorites not get another unearned accolade. Who doesn't like to see their friends fail, every now and again? I asked dryly. It makes things interesting. That it does. Go on now, teach. I have gears to grease. When don't you? Lunch, for sure. He walked off, his cane creaking on the wooden floorboards, and I turned back to my students. I was glad they could handle this on their own. I had a lot of thinking to do. A lot of thinking indeed. The week having ended, our second joint training session occurred. Teams 7, 8 and, as I had predicted, 10, were gathered at a local training field, with the 3 instructors stood in front of them. Today, Andoryu-sensei will be running a few training exercises with you, Kurenai explained. Asuma-sensei and I have to take care of a few things. Asuma smiled at me. Think you can handle them by yourself? It didn't take a ninja to figure out what they were really up to, so I shrugged and raised an eyebrow. Sure, I'll try and keep the grievous injuries and arson to a minimum, and have them in bed by 9, I quipped. You two have fun on that mission, I said dryly. Kurenai flushed a bit, but smiled back before the two hurried off. I watched them go, amused, and then looked back at my students. That mission being, I take it? Shikamaru asked. Like rabbits on cocaine, I nodded, over the scandalized gasps of Sakura and Ino. Dummy, don't just say it like that. Ino hissed at him, before glaring at me. Somehow, and you'll find this hard to believe, but I wasn't intimidated. I wondered if Asuma actually let her boss him around. Yeah, Sakura added. Shikamaru sighed, muttering his trademark phrase. Team 10, physically, was about what you'd expect. Shikamaru was very Asian, with tan skin and dark brown, almost black hair. Choji too, was very Asian around the eyes, though he was paler than Shikamaru. The show was unfair to his whole clan. Yes, they were heavy, yes they had fat, but more like a football player who'd recently retired than a chubby kid who sat in front of a TV or computer all day. You could see the muscles underneath the fat. Ino was rather like Sakura in that she had more European features than Asian, but her hair was so pale I nearly expected it to be bleached. Her bust and hips were also more developed than the anime or manga would have you believe, and was slightly taller than Sakura. Probably all part of their rivalry. I looked over my students, thinking about what to do. I then smiled. All right, the first exercise is fairly simple, I said. I formed a ball about the size of someone's head out of silk, and inflated it with air. Defense can be just as important to a ninja as offense. We frequently are called upon to protect rich or politically important people. I pointed at a nearby tree. One team will defend that tree. The other two teams will try to hit the tree with the ball. The only rules are, the attackers cannot use their hands or any jutsu, just their bodies. The defenders? Anything goes. When a ball gets passed, you switch with the team. Ringumo's eyes got big and sparkly at this. Being a shapeshifter, she had adjusted her appearance for maximum cuteness. Ooh, can I kick the ball too, Endo-kun? Of course you can, Gumo-chan, I said with a smile. So it's like soccer then? Shikamaru sighed. What a drag. There is a catch though, I said. Whichever team spends the least time defending, that is. Let the balls get past them the quickest, will be hung upside down from said tree for the rest of the day, while Ringumo here bounces the ball off your faces. My familiars smiled happily. Yay, the rookies all looked nervous. Especially Shino. Well, spiders weren't really his thing, after all. Or any Abarames. First up, Team 10, I said. I saw Naruto and Kiba smirk. Shikamaru looked irritated, but I figured he wouldn't go down easily. Choji looked determined. Ino opened her mouth to protest, but a look at her shut her up. Begin. Now, I said, tossing the ball up into the air. Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino moved to cover the tree, while the other rookies scrambled for the ball. The first shot came from Kiba, and Shikamaru got smacked in the head. I wasn't sure if he was blocking with it either. Gah, haha, yay, Ringumo cheered, and she began to chase the ball around, attempting to kick it. However, every time she got close, one of the rookies kicked it at the tree. Which led to the comical sight of her rushing about frantically, trying to get a shot in. Heck, it was downright adorable. Naturally, the game was more to keep them busy and develop teamwork than have a real winner. I didn't even put in a time limit. You wanted a winner from this exercise, you just had to look at me, haha. I settled in to watch the carnage when I felt something tugging on my ear. Endo-kun, Endo-kun. Fangumo hissed. Mom wants to see you. She says it's urgent. I grimaced. I see. I was dreading this, to be honest. Sure, it's the job of the spider sage to be a liaison between this world and the spider plane, but... Well, come on. Would you want to return to a nightmarish world filled with giant, sentient monsters? Granted, I was on first-name terms with many of them, but all the same. Right then, I sighed. I produced the spider scroll, and laid it down on the ground. I spread it open, and began making the hand seals for the reverse summon. Hopefully I would have this wrapped up before lunch. Kachiyo say no. Ball. Ringumo screamed, and I looked up. My summon was running right for me, ball held triumphantly over her head, as Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura all ran after her. Hey, bring it back, Ringumo. We need that. It's for jutsu? Poof. My chakras surged as the jutsu completed, and an explosion of smoke later, I was suddenly elsewhere. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.